Chapter 1165. Since there was nothing else, Li Zongjio went to Soaring Cloud Inn to rest. Soaring Cloud Inn was an inn under the name of Arakuni, so there was no problem with all kinds of security measures. After knowing that Li Zongjio was going to stay in the inn, Lan Yuyan dropped everything and sent Li Zongjio to Soaring Cloud Inn. This made Zhao Lei extremely dissatisfied, but he did not dare to compare himself with Li Zongjio. Otherwise, he would be offending his superiors. This is Manager Lai Fu. If you need anything, just tell him directly. Lai Fu, this is Elder Li, our most distinguished guest. When the manager of Soaring Cloud Inn saw that Lan Yuyan was leading the way, he knew that these two people were not simple, so he quickly went forward to greet them. Don't worry, you can go ahead, Li Zongjio said. Lan Yuyan did not stay for long. After all, there were still many things to deal with. After saying goodbye to Li Zongjio, she hurried back. Let's have a drink first. Manager, arrange a private room with a good view. Don't worry, leave it to me. We have a private room in the Soaring Cloud Inn. It's big enough to see the moon and the entire Kuan city. If the sun rises during the day, it's like a carp leaping over the Dragon Gate. Manager Lai Fu arranged a private room for Li Zongjio, Zhao Lei and the others on the top floor of the Supreme Pavilion. At the same time, he also served the best wine in the inn. Have a seat, don't just stand there. I don't like that, Li Zongjio said. Zhao Lei and the others naturally felt like they were dreaming. They did not expect to have the opportunity to sit at the same table as the Imperial Protector. Moreover, looking at Li Zongjio's appearance, they knew that he did not want to get involved in the affairs of the Imperial Court. He was just a top expert who wanted to concentrate on cultivation. Tonight, Zhao Lei had witnessed Li Zongjio's strength. When Lan Yuyan was being held hostage, he didn't even make any extra movements and killed an primitive emperor expert. Such strength had already reached a transcendent realm. It is a level that mortals like us can only look up to. Even if the Blue Tiger army that had accompanied them all attacked together, they still wouldn't be able to harm a single hair on Li Zongjio's head. This was how terrifying his strength was. Lord Imperial Tutor, please. After the dishes were served, they immediately poured wine for Li Zongjio. It was already an honor for the rest of the guards to be able to sit at the same table. They were not qualified to pour wine for Li Zongjio. Don't be restrained. Let's drink together. Li Zongjio and a few people drank wine together. Li Zongjio didn't have much to say, as if he didn't like to express himself. On the other hand, Zhao Lei liked to speak with assurance, and showed off in front of Li Zongjio. It's strange. Before we came, our Blue Tiger army was in charge of searching for relics. We were directly dispatched here after finding some clues. And recently, there have been some ferocious demons. Didn't they die out? However, these demons like to cause trouble. They forcibly occupied a place that we had previously explored. When the matter here is over, we will send troops to conquer this place. Zhao Lei drank a little too much. This matter was confidential and not confidential. It depended on who was told. Zhao Lei intended to rely on Li Zongjio, so it was normal for him to reveal this information to Li Zongjio. This matter is confidential. It must not be leaked. I heard that this underground palace was the palace of the previous dynasty's Saint Martial Great Emperor. Saint Martial Great Emperor. Speaking of this legendary figure, almost all the cultivators were full of interest. Even Li Zongjio was quite interested in this Saint Martial Great Emperor. After all, the Saint Martial Great Emperor founded the Saint Martial Empire. It was the only empire that unified the entire Saint Martial continent. The territories of the current three dynasties were built on the foundation of the former Saint Martial Empire. As the most powerful existence in the Saint Martial continent, there were quite a lot of legends left behind. Saint Martial Great Emperor? Li Zongjio was also very interested. Even in his previous life, no one had found the underground palace created by the Saint Martial Great Emperor. To be precise, the core of the underground palace was not found. However, some other smaller underground palaces were found. There were many traps and countless dangers. It was said that there were many spiritual guards. The refining method of these spiritual guards was quite cruel. A living expert was forcibly refined into an undead, and his soul was sealed in a coffin. He was controlled by the Saint Martial Great Emperor for eternity. This was only a legend before it was discovered. However, Li Zongjio knew that it was true. Moreover, the strength of these spiritual guards was extremely strong. Li Zongjio once broke into a Saint Martial underground palace. There were some treasures left behind by the Saint Martial Great Emperor. However, after Li Zongjio broke in, a fierce battle broke out in the underground palace. In the end, he was heavily injured, and the things in the underground palace collapsed on their own, completely burying and disappearing. If Li Zongjio hadn't escaped quickly, he would have died in the underground palace. At that time, Li Zongjio had already reached the supremacy realm. It was simply unimaginable. Not only was he in danger, but he also ended up with nothing. Therefore, Li Zongjio did not explore the underground palace anymore. Anyway, Li Zongjio was already at the peak of the supremacy realm. It was good that he did not fight for these things. However, Li Zongjio had never heard that the core of the Saint Martial Great Emperor's underground palace had been excavated. If that was the case, such a big event would definitely cause a huge sensation. Saint Martial Underground Palace? Even a Yuan emperor would only be courting death if he went there. I advise you not to look for these things. Li Zongjio glanced at Zhao Lei and said. The few of them were only at the Yuan monarch realm. They were not even Yuan emperors, let alone going into the Saint Martial Underground Palace. It was clearly an act of courting death. However, Li Zongjio was very surprised that the Saint Martial Underground Palace was discovered so quickly and appeared so long in advance. It seemed that it was also because of Li Zongjio's rebirth. The trajectory of many things had changed. The things that happened in the previous life might not happen normally. Some people might not even exist anymore. However, Li Zongjio did not care about these things. As long as the Li family still existed, everything was negotiable. Things could develop however they wanted. Military orders are like mountains. I can't help it, Zhao Lei and the others knew the danger of this place. However, as soldiers, they had to be at the forefront. When the time comes, send someone to look for me if you need me. Li Zongjio thought that he had suffered a loss in this underground palace in his previous life. He had to get it back in this life. What he could not do in his previous life, he might not be able to do in this life. After all, Li Zongjio was very interested in the Saint Martial Underground Palace if it was not too dangerous. Chapter 1166. After a night of drinking. Zhao Lei and the others were also drunk. Li Zongjio, on the other hand, was enjoying the spectacle of a carp leaping over the dragon's gate. It was as if there was a strong wind blowing a large cloud above Kun Castle towards the golden sun. In Li Zongjio's eyes, such a scene could only be described as ordinary. However, when more people saw it, they would definitely say, "What the fuck?" After paying the bill, Li Zongjio also returned to his room to cultivate. Although he had now broken through the supremacy realm, he was still far from the peak of his cultivation in his previous life. Moreover, in this life, he still needed to break through the limit. In the mansion of the Shui Kun family, Langu and the others also carefully examined Lan Shuehe's body. After a round of examination, they were extremely surprised because they found that there were no extra wounds on Lan Shuehe's body. His throat was crushed to death by a single move. Lan Shouxin said, "There are no obvious wounds on the rest of his body. He was killed in an instant." Lan Shuehe didn't even have the strength to resist. Lan Shouyu added, "Elder Wuchang, with the abilities of the 5 poisons, you can't even do such a simple thing?" Langu said in a deep voice, facing a dark place in the secret room. Then, a figure walked out of the darkness. His left arm was empty. Even his face was extremely pale, and the aura on his body was extremely weak. If he hadn't escaped quickly last night, he would have been killed by the spirit of the sword. That old thing's saber was actually so powerful. This person was the Elder Wuchang sent by the 5 poisons to meet with them. Yesterday, when he had launched a sneak attack on the Wild Kuan system, he had been caught off guard by the sudden appearance of 2 experts. His subordinates had all been killed. Only he managed to escape in time. Otherwise, he would have died in Arakuni's mansion last night. It was quite dangerous. He never thought that such a situation would happen. The number of experts on the other side was beyond his imagination. He never thought that there would be so many experts in Arakuni. I've never seen those two people before. They must be people who helped Arakuni. However, you don't have to worry. My sex people have already made a move and attacked the Green Dragon army. Next, we'll hold back for now. Lan Yu doesn't have many days left to live. As long as you win the city lord candidate, Kuan City will be ours. The people in Arakuni's side must be busy taking care of themselves now. The Green Dragon army suffered heavy casualties last night. When the time comes, they will definitely find the people in Arakuni to settle the score. Although Langu was now the acting city lord, in fact, Arakuni was still in the dominant position. Moreover, the city guards were also Arakuni's people. They only needed to fan the flames from behind. They could just sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. They didn't have to worry about other things happening. In fact, this was a very safe method. They just needed to mess up the situation and make the people in Arakuni busy. They didn't have time to care about other things. As long as Lan Wujiang won this election, there wouldn't be a problem. That better be the case. Otherwise, there is no need to continue this cooperation. Langu looked at the elder Wu Chang. Finally, he looked at the person sitting at the back of the room. This person had delicate features and was indifferent to Lan Shuehe's corpse in front of him. It was as if this matter had nothing to do with him. He was flipping through a book in his hand. This book itself was just a romance novel. Lan Wujiang. Wujiang, I heard that the person in Arakuni is Kuan Arisher. Are you confident? Langu looked at Lan Wujiang and said. At this moment, Lan Wujiang slowly closed the book in his hand. Kuan Arisher? That trash. I only need 3 moves to kill him. Lan Wujiang was obviously very disdainful of this Kuan Arisher. In his eyes, there weren't many people who could be his opponent. At such a young age, he had already become a member of the Elder Hall. Ranked in the Elder Hall. This was an existence that many young people in Kuan Castle looked up to. Therefore, it was normal for his words to be a little arrogant. Okay, then we'll kill him in this competition. Langu's eyes were filled with a fierce light. He didn't care about Kuan Arashi's life at all. If he wanted to kill him, then so be it. Getting rid of this Kuan Arisher was also beneficial for them. Even the people in Arakuni had to be eliminated one by one. Lan Yuyen would also be a great threat and very difficult to deal with. They needed to take advantage of this and find a suitable opportunity to get rid of Lan Yuyen. Outside the city, the Green Dragon army had arrived. However, the Green Dragon army that had been attacking for an entire night looked extremely miserable. The commander of the Green Dragon army, Hua Feihong. Hua Feihong's face was filled with iron and blood as he led his army to attack. The entire army was filled with killing intent. Last night, there were actually people who came to attack the army camp. Although there weren't many of them, they were good at using poison. Half of the 20,000 Green Dragon army was wiped out in an instant. Ever since the Green Dragon army set out for war, they had never encountered such a huge setback. They were ambushed and suffered such heavy losses. This made Hua Feihong even more furious. When they met up with the Blue Tiger army, they realized that the enemy's commander wasn't in the army camp. When the 10,000 Blue Tiger army saw the people from the Green Dragon army charging towards them with extreme anger and killing intent, they knew that something bad had happened. Where's your general? Hua Feihong asked. 10,000 soldiers and horses were stationed directly at the city gate. They were only 1,000 steps away from the enemy camp. If they were to attack, they would all be dead. How could there be such a stupid action? Reporting to the general. General Zhao Lei entered the city with the imperial tutor. A high-ranking general stepped forward and said, "This person was the commander of the infantry battalion." Imperial tutor? Hua Feihong instantly frowned. In the entire Xingyan dynasty, there was only one imperial tutor, and that was Li Zongjio. Could it be that Li Zongjio was here? It's Li Zongjio, imperial tutor. The commander said. Hua Feihong heard this and his entire body immediately emitted a murderous aura. What bullshit imperial tutor? Looks like the people who ambushed the Green Dragon army last night must have been sent by Li Zongjio. How dare they attack the Green Dragon army? This is already the doing of a rebel. Men, send me a letter of war. Huo Feihong didn't care and immediately ordered his men to beat the war drums. At the same time, he raised his commander's flag. When the horn sounded, the city guards on Kuan Castle immediately became alert. As expected, these people couldn't hold back and wanted to attack. Chapter 1167. The garrison troops on the city walls also began to beat their drums thunderously. Rumble! The sound was so loud that the entire city shook. It was hard to believe. The residents of Kuan Castle also raised their heads. Their expressions were filled with fear. They were extremely shocked by the commotion. These are war drums. What's going on? Why are war drums sounding? Is this a drill? Many residents of Kuan Castle started to panic. They didn't know what was going on. However, some people heard that the Imperial Army had been stationed nearby. The situation was quite dangerous. However, some people didn't believe that the Imperial Court would actually make a move. After all, Kuan Castle also belonged to the Xingyan dynasty. Why would this happen? However, the appearance of such a thing was quite puzzling. This time, the Green Dragon army didn't hold back. They directly used some siege weapons and instantly caused great damage to the city walls. Siege ballistas, go. Huo Feihong naturally wouldn't let go of such a great opportunity. Li Zongjio would at least return the favor tenfold for what he did to the Huo family. Boom. The city gates of Kuan Castle were directly blasted apart by a few ballista bolts. The city gates, which were made of tens of thousands of kilograms of Phoebe Jinan wood, were directly blasted apart by the bolts. Huo Feihong didn't have so many concerns. Moreover, the Green Dragon army suffered heavy casualties last night. He had never seen such a thing happen before. Now, Huo Feihong directly put all the blame on Li Zongjio. If there was anyone in Kuan Castle who had such ability, it would definitely be Li Zongjio. Other than Li Zongjio, who else could it be? After the city gates were blasted apart, a stone gate that weighed tens of thousands of tons suddenly fell down. Boom! When the stone gate fell down, Kuan Castle's defensive state was immediately activated. After all, as an ancient city of war, the flames of war had spread countless times. They had seen more severe situations. Therefore, this problem was nothing. Kuan Stone Gate. How extravagant! Huo Feihong sneered when he saw the hidden gate of Kuan City. However, he knew that it was impossible to break the gate open. Only Kuan City would do something like this. Huo Feihong thought about it and sneered when he saw the gate of Kuan City. Cloud scaling ladder. The army once again pushed out this extremely tall cloud climbing ladder. Following the appearance of the cloud climbing ladder, the archers of Kuan Castle also began their counterattack. The sharpshooters of the Green Dragon army also began to fire. As both sides fought back and forth, there were casualties on both sides. What's going on? When Lan Wei and the others returned to the city walls, they saw that both sides were already engaged in a bloody battle. Stop, all of you stop! Lan Wei ordered. Looking at the Green Dragon army that appeared below the city walls, he knew that things were not going well. Quickly informed the second miss and that Zhao Lei. However, before Lan Wei could send someone to notify them, Lan Yuyan and the others had already rushed up the city walls. Give me a bow. His subordinate placed a longbow in his hand. Huo Feihong channeled his Yuan energy and shot an arrow towards the city walls. Whoosh! Lan Wei did not have time to turn around before he felt a sharp aura piercing his body. Lan Wei's body was instantly pierced by the arrow. General! Everyone was shocked. Immediately, the shield-bearers surrounded him. The shield-bearers were all at the front, but the arrow was shot through the gap between two shields. This was enough to show that Huo Feihong's archery skills were superb. Lan Wei was hit by the arrow and immediately staggered. Uncle Lan Wei! When she saw that Lan Wei was shot, Lan Yuan was extremely angry. If you want to fight, then let's fight. My Lan family has never been afraid. When Lan Yuan saw that Lan Wei was shot by the arrow, her delicate face was filled with rage. Don't be impulsive, don't be impulsive. When Zhao Lei saw this, he immediately shouted and signaled for everyone to stop. After all, he was in the city and no one was a human. I'll go talk to him, Zhao Lei said. Then he walked up the city walls and shouted at Hua Feihong below. General Hua, I am the deputy commander of the Blue Tiger Army, Zhao Lei. Please stop the attack. Now that the imperial tutor is still in the city, it's not a good time to attack. Zhao Lei shouted. The Blue Tiger Army did not know what was going on. The Green Dragon Army wanted to kill as soon as they arrived, so they did not know what to do. After all, although Hua Feihong was the commander of the Green Dragon Army, he could not command the Blue Tiger Army unless Zhao Lei was dead. General Zhao, are you going to defect to the enemy? Everyone in Kuan Castle wants to be the enemy of the dynasty. Can't you see that? You want to ally with the enemy at this moment. If you don't return to the army immediately, I will believe that you are with the Kuan Castle and annihilate you together. Hua Feihong said coldly. Annihilate you together? I want to see how capable you are. If you have the ability, then come and attack the city. When Lan Yuyan heard this, she was unhappy. What was there to be arrogant about? He actually dared to say such big words. Since he wanted to fight, then she was not afraid of Kuan Castle. Did you hear that? Openly going against the Imperial Army is rebellion. Everyone in the Blue Tiger Army, listen up. Your deputy commander has been bewitched by the enemy. From now on, I have full authority to command. Anyone who disobeys will be executed. Hua Feihong said to the 10,000 Blue Tiger Army behind him in a deep voice. Immediately, these Blue Tiger Army people were at a loss. Who should they listen to now? Their own commander was on the enemy's city wall. Such a chaotic and complicated scene caught the Blue Tiger Army a little off guard. However, when a few people hesitated, they were immediately executed by the Green Dragon Army. Their heads fell to the ground. Blood splattered everywhere. Who else dares to disobey? Hua Feihong beheaded a few generals on the spot. The others were all shocked. They all knew that if they did not listen to Hua Feihong today, then they would not be able to live. Damn it, this guy wants to rebel. I'm going to report him. When Zhao Lei saw this, he was also furious. This Hua Feihong actually killed his people in front of him. He did not put him in his eyes at all. So what if you are one of the 4 great armies, the Green Dragon Army? Could it be that you can disregard the law? The battle between Kuan Castle and the Green Dragon Army instantly began. Many experts of the Lan family also joined the battle. There were a total of 30,000 guards in the city. In addition to the absolute defense of Kuan Castle, the Green Dragon Army had rich combat experience after all. In addition, Lan Wei was injured, so his command was also weakened. Therefore, the morale of the Kuan Castle was slightly low. Many people were killed by the enemy's bows and arrows, and there were even experts who jumped onto the city wall. After killing many people, they jumped down again. Everyone in the city knew that a war had broken out, and they all began to pack their luggage. Li Zongjio, who was resting in the Soaring Cloud Inn, heard the commotion outside, and from time to time, roaring sounds. He immediately frowned. Chapter 1168. Kuan Erasure also climbed up the city wall and began to fight with the Green Dragon Army. The Green Dragon Army actually used a flying rope and brought many people up the city wall. The entire area above the city wall was extremely chaotic. Zhao Lei and a few others were stuck in the middle and did not know what to do. At this moment, it was time for them to make a decision. They could either rush out now, apologize to Hua Feihong and say that they were standing in the wrong place, and then lead their troops to attack Kuan Castle. Or they could stand firmly with the people of Kuan Castle and prove Kuan Castle's innocence. However, there was a certain risk in doing so, and that was that they would be killed by the Green Dragon Army in the end. Not only would they not be able to clear Kuan Castle's name, but their reputation would also be tarnished for thousands of years. General, we can't delay any longer. From the looks of it, the people of Kuan Castle could not stop them at all. If they waited for Hua Feihong to kill his way in before surrendering, the effect would be greatly reduced, and the other party might not accept it. Let's do it. Let's do something really big today. Zhao Lei gritted his teeth. This was a very precious opportunity, and it was also his only chance. People of the Blue Tiger Army, listen up. The commander of the Green Dragon Army is abusing military orders and harming loyal people. Capture Hua Feihong. At this moment, Zhao Lei had already decided to be on the same side as Kun Castle. This was the only way to gain Li Zongjiu's trust. If Li Zongjiu did not care about Kun Castle, he would not have come all the way from the Sacred Flame Imperial City to such a place and get involved in this mess. This meant that in Li Zongjiu's heart, Kun Castle was also very important. How dare you rebel? Hua Feihong sneered when he saw Zhao Lei completely rebelling. However, there were really many people from the Blue Tiger Army who attacked the Green Dragon Army. After all, these people from the Green Dragon Army were indeed arrogant, and they were under Zhao Lei's command. It did not matter who was good and who was bad, the important thing was that the one giving the orders was their own general. Thank you, General Zhao Lei. Because the Blue Tiger Army's sudden betrayal, the rhythm of the Green Dragon Army's attack was disrupted. Their attack speed and rhythm was affected, as if they were being attacked from the front and back. Arakuni's people were fighting fiercely with the enemy on the city wall. The people from the Shuekun faction were clapping and cheering behind the scenes. Sure enough, the Green Dragon Army did not disappoint them. However, they must kill the people from Arakuni. Only then would they have the chance to take control of the city. As for what would happen after that, they would talk about it later. After the Green Dragon Army destroyed the people from Arakuni, they would then destroy the Green Dragon Army. Wouldn't that be perfect? Let's fight, let's fight. All of you, keep an eye on them. We must turn the situation around at the most critical moment. Langa laughed and said, he never thought that things would go so smoothly. He almost clapped his hands and cheered. The people from the Shuekun faction were also very excited. They were all ready and waiting for orders. On the city wall, the Kun wing spear in Kun Arashi's hand was greatly damaged. He did not know how many Green Dragon Army's armor it had destroyed. Looking at Hua Feihong, who was protected by the iron barrel formation, Kun Arashir gritted his teeth. You guys guard the city wall. I will go down and kill Hua Feihong. If he wanted to have a chance of survival, he had to capture the leader first. After saying that, Kun Arashir jumped down and went down. Whoosh! Little Kun! Lan Yuyan exclaimed. However, she had already seen Kun Arashir jump down. She thought that Kun Arashir was truly isolated and helpless. Moreover, the Green Dragon Army had many experts. What Kun Arashir did was extremely dangerous. It was no different from walking into a trap. He was too impulsive. Zhao Lei saw Kun Arashir rushing down the city wall and slapped his thigh. This time, Kun Arashir was dead meat. The enemy was waiting for Kun Arashir or someone else to rush down. Capture this person alive. Hua Feihong pointed at Kun Arashir and said. The 13 cavalrymen that had been guarding Hua Feihong immediately split up and charged towards Lan Kun, like 13 arrows that had left the bow. Many of the Green Dragon Army formed a battle formation and charged towards Kun Arashir. Kun Arashir put away the Kun wing spear in his hand and took out the 10,000 slaughter sword that Li Zongjiu gave him. You forced me to do this. Immediately, the 10,000 slaughter sword in his hand emitted a cold light. Wherever the 10,000 slaughter sword passed, the Green Dragon Army soldiers were easily cut down as if they were dried branches. As the sword chi rampaged, Kun Arashir rushed down and attracted the firepower of the Green Dragon Army. The people on the city wall could only watch as Kun Arashir and the Green Dragon Army fought. With the 10,000 slaughter sword in hand, Kun Arashir was exceptionally ferocious. This degree of ferocity was almost over the top. The Green Dragon Army was slaughtered until they fell apart. Their skulls shattered and their bodies scattered. Many of them were cut into pieces by the sword without any hesitation. Damn, this kid is so fierce. Zhao Lei and the others saw Kun Arashir fighting like a god of death. It was as if no one could stop Kun Arashi's footsteps. The 13 cavalry rushed in front of Kun Arashir and threw their spears at Kun Arashir. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The spear formation continued to attack Kun Arashir. Kun Arashir himself had killed nearly 300 Green Dragon Army soldiers. The 10,000 slaughter sword had absorbed most of Kun Arashi's strength and was sent flying by the last spear. Ding! Kuan Erasure was knocked back. At the same time, the cavalry rushed towards Kuan Erasure and sent Kuan Erasure flying again. As he was sent flying, Kuan Erasure also held the sword in his hand tightly. He spat out a mouthful of blood. "I want to save little Kuan." Seeing Kuan Erasure being repelled, Lan Yuan could no longer hold it in. However, she was stopped by Zhao Lei. "No, jumping down now will only lead to death. You'll be sacrificing your life for nothing." Lan Yi, who had been watching the battle for a long time, could no longer hold it in and wanted to intervene. According to the laws of this continent, primitive emperors were not allowed to participate in the war. Of course, they could still intervene to protect the last bloodline of their tribe. However, they had to think clearly. If they intervened, it would mean that more primitive emperors would come knocking on their door. They were not afraid of just one or two of them. If you use your hands, the next thing you will have is a group of origin emperors. You won't have any leeway for regret. Therefore, Lan Yi was not willing to intervene unless it was the most crucial moment. However, Lan Yi was more experienced with Kuan Arashi's performance. She would rather take a greater risk and delay Kuan Erasure. Damn it! Kuan Erasure was half kneeling on the ground with his sword in hand. At this moment, the 13 Azure Dragon Iron Cavalry had already surrounded Kuan Erasure. 13 spears were suspended above Kuan Arashi's head, ready to pierce down at any time. Hua Feihong's mouth curved into a cold smile. At the same time, he looked towards Kuan Castle. "Li Zongjio, aren't you very capable? Today, I want to see what you're capable of." Now that they had left the sacred Flame Royal City, the world had become Hua Feihong's world. He could do whatever he wanted without any scruples. There was nothing to be afraid of. Right at this moment, an invisible power seemed to spread out from the city. The 13 Azure Dragon Iron Cavalry raised their heads and looked towards the sky. However, the moment they raised their heads, 13 heads were sent flying. Bang, bang, bang. The 13 heads fell to the ground one after another. Blood splattered all over Kuan Arashi's body. Seeing this scene, everyone was incomparably shocked. At the same time, their eyes lit up. Such a powerful force. Only one person could do it. Lan Yi did not intervene. Therefore, there was only one person who could do it. Li Zongjio. A figure appeared beside Kuan Erasure and helped Kuan Erasure up. "You didn't call me for a fight?" Li Zongjio said. Kuan Erasure also smiled bitterly. "I thought I could handle it." Kuan Erasure said. However, when he used the 1,000 Slaughter Sword in battle, it brought him great suffering. The power of the 1,000 Slaughter Sword really exhausted Kuan Arashi's strength. It was too strong. It was not something an ordinary person could control. Moreover, Kuan Erasure had not even used 1% of the 1,000 Slaughter Sword's power. Be careful. It's someone from the Hua family. There's no one in this world that I need to be careful of. Li Zongjio said indifferently. He casually grabbed a steel spear on the ground. With a swing of his hand, the steel spear shot towards Hua Feihong like a sharp arrow. Protect the general. Dozens of shield bearers stacked into a long dragon. However, this steel spear instantly blasted open a bloody hole in the shields of these several dozen shield bearers. Hua Feihong's head also exploded with a bang. A headshot. Chapter 1169. At this moment, at least 8,000 Green Dragon Army soldiers saw their commander-in-chief get his head blown off. They had never seen or heard of such an exciting scene. They were so shocked that they had never heard of it before. All of the Green Dragon Army soldiers were stunned. There were still some Hua family soldiers in the army. When they saw this, they wanted to continue the charge and kill Li Zongjio and Kuan Erasure. However, the soldiers around them seemed to be frozen in place. They did not know what to do. Even though they had heard the order, they were no longer prepared to step forward. Stepping forward at this moment would be akin to seeking death. Even with the strength of the commander-in-chief, he had been killed on the spot by this move. He didn't even need to step forward to blow up the general's head with ease. There was no need to continue this battle. The Imperial Tutor is here. Are you Green Dragon Army trying to rebel? Zhao Lei rushed out at this critical moment and roared at the thousands of Green Dragon Army soldiers. Hua Feihong's death was naturally satisfying, but these people had also killed many of the Blue Tiger Army soldiers. Therefore, Zhao Lei wanted nothing more than to kill these damn things. However, victory and defeat were common in war. Casualties were also inevitable. It was a very normal phenomenon. When they heard Zhao Lei's roar at this moment, the Green Dragon Army soldiers were slightly shaken. Everyone retreat. The remaining generals of the Hua family also gave up on revenge. They immediately led the remaining people out of the encirclement. The Blue Tiger Army also stopped resisting. At this moment, the Green Dragon Army was bound to explode with the will to die. If they appeared at this time to resist, they would be met with extremely strong resistance. The gains would not make up for the losses. At least now they were all colleagues. If they really fought to the death, neither side would have an easy time. Li Zongjio pointed his finger forward. Immediately, a light emerged from his hand. Boom! The soul cutter directly pierced through the Hua family member who had just given the order. Another general had died. The others ran even faster. Third brother! One of the Hua family's subordinates shouted when he saw the fallen general. His shout immediately summoned the soul-slaying knife. With another swoosh, another figure fell from the horse's back. Bang! Another one had died. The remaining members of the Hua family saw this scene and immediately understood that Li Zongjio was ruthless. As long as they were related to the Hua family, they would not be spared. As a result, these people didn't dare to speak. They didn't know where the flying dagger was hiding. After killing, it disappeared without a trace. It was impossible to guard against such a sure kill move. In their eyes, they were extremely vigilant. The terrifying life-reaping flying dagger seemed to have disappeared. At this moment, the Green Dragon Army had already retreated more than 10 miles away. Although it looked extremely embarrassing, saving their lives was more important. A few members of the Hua family looked around. They were already more than 10 miles away. Moreover, Li Zongjio and the others hadn't chased after them. They probably wouldn't be in any danger. We must avenge third brother and fourth brother. A member of the Hua family said. However, as soon as this member of the Hua family spoke, his head exploded. The group of people around him also had their heads pierced by the dark light of the flying dagger. Bang! 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 This group of commanders of the Green Dragon Army were all killed. All of them died without a sound. When the surrounding Green Dragon Army guards saw this, they looked at each other in dismay. What kind of demonic technique did the Imperial Tutor use? He was able to accurately kill people from dozens of miles away. What kind of demonic technique was this? After this mysterious light circled around, it didn't appear again. However, until now, no one in the Green Dragon Army dared to say a word for the Hua family. If they were killed by this mysterious light, it wouldn't be worth it. Everything was unpredictable. Li Zongjio had only appeared for a short while, but he had already turned the tide of the battle. It was simply amazing. It turned out that one person really had the ability to change the world. With Li Zongjio here, Kuan Castle could be defended. Kuan Castle could reach the sky in a single bound. Zhao Lei also went to organize his own army. The Blue Tiger Army had fought a battle for unknown reasons today. They were even a little confused as to why they had started killing. However, Zhao Lei had already decided on the direction of this operation. As long as the matter of the rebel army was resolved, nothing else would be a problem. Since he had already made such a big move, then he might as well go all the way. He would make this move even bigger. Zhao Lei had never thought that he would be so bold. He was even a little impulsive. This was all because Li Zongjio seemed to have an invisible force on his body. Even if his shoulders trembled a little, it could completely change the situation. Thank you, elderly. Thank you. Lan Yuyan didn't know what to say. She didn't even know how to repay Li Zongjio. It seemed that the only thing she could do was to repay him with her body. Otherwise, nothing would be able to attract Li Zongjio's interest. His strength was already so extraordinary. What else could he care about? However, if she were to repay him with her body, it was another matter altogether. Lan Yuyan's heart was also very conflicted. You don't have to be so polite. Li Zongjio said casually. It wouldn't be difficult to kill all these people from the Green Dragon army. It was just that Li Zongjio didn't want to do so. He just wanted to kill the people from the Hua family. It seems that I have to make the first move to gain the upper hand. Lan Yuyan had secretly made up her mind. Previously, Lan Yin had been avoiding them because they were from the same clan. However, these people from the Shui Kuan faction didn't seem to know how to restrain themselves. On the contrary, they kept thinking that they were afraid. They weren't strong enough. The people from Gu Kuan faction arrived late. However, they had clearly seen the scene of the battle just now. Lan Jiangshui was dressed in martial attire. When she saw Kuan Erasure rushing down to fight, she wanted to rush down as well. However, she was stopped by the elders of the clan. The only clan that wasn't present was the Shui Kuan faction. When the Shui Kuan faction received the news, they were all in a state of confusion. They never thought that there would be such a reversal. Li Zongjio. It's actually Li Zongjio. I knew it. How could such a perfect plan fail continuously? You are all trash. Li Zongjio entered the city and you didn't even know. It seemed that the people from the Shui Kuan faction didn't know that the person who entered the city was actually Li Zongjio. If they knew, they would have probably given up on this plan. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. When Lang Jiu found out that it was Li Zongjio, he knew that it was completely over. Damn it. How could it be Li Zongjio? Sure enough, Lan Yuyan joined forces with the Blue Tiger army and surrounded the Shui Kuan faction. Li Zongjio didn't want to get involved in this matter. He left it to the spirit of the sword and Bei Ku to deal with it. There was nothing to be afraid of with the power of the Shui Kuan faction. Moreover, the Gu Kuan faction, which had been silent all this time, had also expressed their attitude and stood on Arakuni's side. Elder Lang Jiu, do you want to hand him over yourself, or do you want us to rush in and find him? Chapter 1170. Arakuni's people directly went to the door and forced the abdication in such a strong state. However, Langu and the others were not sure who Lan Yuyan wanted them to hand over. Could it be that Lan Yuyan already knew that the 5 elders of the 5 poisons were hiding here? The strange thing was, how did they know? It was impossible for them to know. Could it be that they wanted to gain something without risking anything and use it to get information from them? However, Langu thought about it again. If that was the case, then everything made sense. Even Li Zongjio personally took action. It was impossible for the 5 elders to escape last night. Moreover, they even cut off the 5 elders' arms. According to the 5 elders' own words, they were attacked by a swordsman last night. That was why they fled in such a sorry state. Who knew that they would end up like this? With an arm cut off, if they did not use a secret technique, it would be difficult for them to escape from the swordsman. The most dangerous place was the safest place. The other party must have thought that the 5 elders had left Kuan Castle. However, after they turned around and returned to the Shui Kuan's mansion, they happened to be right under the other party's nose. No one would have thought. From the looks of it now, it was obvious that this was Li Zongjio's scheme. He wanted to let them escape. Now, they brought people to seal off the Shui Kuan's front, back, left, and right. If they captured the 5 poisons elders on the spot, wouldn't it mean that the Shui Kuan's family colluded with the 5 poisons and directly captured them on the spot? However, it was too late to get rid of the 5 elders now. Therefore, no matter what, they could not let Lan Yuyan rush in with people. Immediately, Langa looked at Lan Yuyan with a mocking expression. Lan Yuyan, don't forget that I'm the current acting city lord. You brought so many people here. Are you trying to rebel? Langu took this time to reveal his identity as the city lord. What's more, now is the time for the city lord candidate selection. Could it be that the people of Arakuni want to find a random reason to manipulate the situation and let the Arakuni completely control Kuan Castle? Aren't we Shui Kuan's people from the Lan family? Langu said loudly. Obviously, at this time, he could only forcefully change the situation and shift his attention to other places. In this way, he could more or less delay some time. At least, he would not be exposed immediately. There would always be some variables that would appear. My ancient Kuan lineage voluntarily withdraws from the competition. Lan Jiangxue from Gu Kuan's faction said. Gu Kuan's faction would naturally not let go of such a lively event. Moreover, they directly stated that they would not participate in the selection. Now, only Kuan Erasure and Lan Wujiang were left. Lan Jiangxue did not think that she would become the city lord candidate. She just wanted to give herself some pressure and train herself. However, when she saw Kuan Erasure jump down from the city walls, she knew that if there was anyone in Kuan Castle who could become the next city lord, it would be Kuan Erasure. Moreover, Kuan Erasure also survived under such circumstances. The divine bravery he displayed on the battlefield was definitely not something that the people of Shui Kuan's faction could compare to. Lan Yuyen was about to say something, but Kuan Erasure directly walked forward. In that case, only you and I are left. I, Kuan Erasure, will fight for Arakuni. Today, we will know who the Shui Kuan's faction will send. Kuan Erasure said indifferently. A wave of heroic spirit rushed straight to the sky. Little Kuan, can you hold on? Lan Yuyen saw Kuan Erasure walk out and could not help but frown. Kuan Erasure also suffered a lot of injuries just now. If he were to fight with his opponent now, he would obviously be at a disadvantage. Kuan Erasure waved his hand, indicating that this situation did not matter to him. Immediately, his body moved slightly. After moving a little, he took out the 1,000 slaughter sword. Kuan Erasure also knew that he could not let these people of Shui Kuan's faction continue to delay. Now, these people were grasping at the last straw, so they wanted to continue to hold on. Therefore, Kuan Erasure came now to completely cut off these people's last straw of hope. Cut off these people's escape route. Lenga saw Kuan Erasure walk out and smiled coldly. As expected, he was fooled. Young people nowadays really had no self-control. They couldn't hold it in. What happened after that was easy to deal with. As long as Lan Wujiang killed Kuan Erasure, he would naturally become the candidate for the city lord. Coupled with his position as the acting city lord, Arakuni would not be able to touch them at all. Therefore, what they needed to do now was to eliminate Kuan Erasure. It was such a good opportunity, and it just so happened that the people of the three factions were all here. Naturally, there was nothing to say. It was in accordance with the rules of the challenge election. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Lan Wujiang tidied up his clothes. In terms of life, Lan Wujiang seemed to be an exquisite person. Everyone retreated. In the front yard, they saw the two young talents about to engage in a head-on confrontation. Lan Wujiang's weapon was a stone fan. The stone fan itself was also made of Kuan stone, but only the ribs of the fan were made of Kuan stone. The surface of the fan was made of extremely sharp black iron. The two were a perfect fit. The combination of each rib and fan blade was ingenious and incomparably exquisite. Such a stone fan, without the craftsmanship of a master, was absolutely impossible to create. Kuan Erasure held the 1,000 slaughter sword, looking at the pretentious man in front of him with a face full of displeasure. This thing dawdled all day long, making him look like a spotless person who fell from the sky. Therefore, it was extremely annoying to watch. Now, the two of them finally confronted each other. It was a good time to vent. Since it was a duel between the two sides, the referee was also the sixth elder of Gu Kuan's faction, Lan Tianjun. Lan Tianjun stood between the two and observed their states. Kuan Erasure had just fought a great battle. Although his body was still injured, his fighting spirit was overflowing. Therefore, he had a certain advantage. On the other hand, Lan Wujiang was full of confidence. He did not put Kuan Erasure in his eyes. Therefore, his eyes were full of arrogance. Let's begin. Lan Wujiang seemed to be impatient to defeat Kuan Erasure and then do his own thing. For him, defeating Kuan Erasure was as easy as flipping his hand. Therefore, he did not want to waste too much time. Lan Kuan, on the other hand, was staring at the mist river in front of him. There was only viciousness in his eyes and nothing else. When fighting, there was no need to talk so much nonsense to bluff. All he needed to do was to defeat his opponent. Both sides stop. The duel begins. As soon as the voice fell, Kuan Erashi's body erupted with an aura that could change the color of heaven and earth. Chapter 1171. The aura that surged out from Kun Arashi's body stunned Lan Wujiang for a moment. In the moment of hesitation, Kun Arashir had already slashed out with his sword. This sword strike seemed to have drawn upon the power of hell. Boom! The overbearing sword aura attacked Lan Wujiang. Lan Wujiang was also under the attack of this sword. He opened the folding fan in his hand, but only heard a muffled sound. Bang! The folding fan in Lan Wujiang's hand was instantly shattered into pieces. He also retreated a few dozen steps. What? Everyone was shocked. Lan Wujiang's eyes were also filled with disbelief. When did Kun Arashi's strength become so strong? No, it wasn't just because of Kun Arashi's strength. It was also because of the sword in Kun Arashi's hand. Everything was strange because of the sword in Kun Arashi's hand. Many experts could already tell that the sword in Kun Arashi's hand was extremely powerful. That sharp intent was also a relatively dangerous aura to them. If such a treasured sword was in my hands, I would be able to unleash its true power. Lan Wujiang condensed his own elemental energy and blocked Kun Arashi's sudden attack. However, the elemental energy defense was gradually broken under Kun Arashi's sword. One could clearly see that Kun Arashir was slowly breaking through Lan Wujiang's defense. Suddenly, Lan Wujiang shot out a few hidden weapons from his sleeves. Swish, swish, swish. Following the explosion of the hidden weapons, they shot towards Kun Arashi's head. They even directly penetrated Kun Arashi's elemental energy defense. However, at the last crucial moment, these 3 poisonous arrows directly stopped in front of Kun Arashi's forehead. Mental power? Lan Wujiang didn't expect that Kun Arashir had cultivated his mental power to such a level. Go! Kun Arashir didn't answer Lan Wujiang's words. He directly deflected the 3 poisonous arrows. His mental power easily deflected the 3 arrows. Lan Wujiang hurriedly leaned back and narrowly dodged the 3 arrows. A blood-red light erupted from the 10,000 slaughter sword. The moment Misty Mist River's figure retreated, a sword light chased after him. Boom! The sword cut off one of Lan Wujiang's legs. Blood spurted out on the spot, and Lan Wujiang's entire body fell to the ground. Bang! Thousand Slaughter Sword, go! After Mist River fell to the ground, Lan Kun had no intention of stopping. He directly pushed the Thousand Slaughter Sword in his hand towards Mist River. The Thousand Slaughter Sword pierced Lan Wujiang's chest. At the same time, the Thousand Slaughter Sword instantly devoured all the blood in Lan Wujiang's body. Lan Wujiang's body was reduced to a pile of skin and bones, falling to the ground. When Kun Arashir killed Lan Wujiang, he didn't hesitate at all. Even the rest of the people didn't show any signs. How could there be such a big gap? After being penetrated by the sword, Lan Wujiang's appearance could no longer be seen clearly. After killing Lan Wujiang, he took back the Thousand Slaughter Sword. There was no trace of blood on it. It was clean. When everyone saw this scene, they were all amazed. Lan Yuyan looked at the decisive Kun Arashir, and a trace of splendor bloomed in her eyes. As expected of her younger brother. Now it seemed that Kun Arashir had truly grown up. If he was properly nurtured in the future, it would only be a matter of time before he became the master of Kun Castle. Sorry, I didn't stop for a moment. Who told this kid to use hidden weapons? Kun Arashir said indifferently. At the same time, he looked at Langu and the others in front of him with a threatening gaze, with a trace of provocation in his eyes. Lan Wujiang and Lan Xuehe secretly colluded with the 5 poisons and used them to harm the people of Kun Castle. I, Kun Arashir, as the young master of Kun Castle, order the people of the 3 branches to gather and kill the 5 poisons tomorrow. Elder Langu, you don't mind leading the way for us, right? Kun Arashir won and naturally became the next master of Kun Castle. However, the master was still in a coma and had not stepped down. When the time was right, Kun Arashir would naturally become the master of Kun Castle. Now that he was the young master of the city, there was nothing wrong with it. When he heard that Kun Arashir wanted to organize people to kill the 5 poisons, Lan Xuehe felt very uncomfortable. Lan Gu didn't know what to feel in his heart, but he was thinking about how to deal with Lan Kun. Only by killing some people would they have a chance to survive. Now that Arakuni's people had too much of an advantage, they didn't even have the slightest chance. Since they wanted to kill the 5 poisons, it was naturally a good opportunity. Of course, Langu didn't directly say what he was thinking, nor did he show it. If he was seen through, then he wouldn't be able to survive. The position of the candidate had also been decided. The reason why they wanted to kill the 5 poisons was to give Zhao Lei of the Blue Tiger Army an explanation. These people were clearly a group of people who wanted to rebel and cause more damage to the Xingyan dynasty. As long as they caught these people and cleaned them up, this matter would be solved. At least Zhao Lei would be able to give an explanation when he returned. In addition, today's fierce battle between Zhao Lei and the Green Dragon Army had also left the Green Dragon Army scratching their heads. How did things become like this? Now that the Green Dragon Army was retreating further and further, the ranks of the remaining generals were unknown. However, they were definitely not people from the Hua family. This was because the people from the Hua family didn't dare to show themselves again. They hid among the troops obediently and only sent someone to the Green Dragon Army's headquarters to report the situation after retreating for 100 miles. In fact, the internal struggle of Kuan Castle was very simple. Whoever was stronger would win. No amount of schemes and tricks would work. Just like now, Kuan Erasure had killed Lan Wujiang in front of everyone. So what? Come if you have the ability. In front of so many Yuan Huang experts, you couldn't do anything at all. You didn't even dare to move. Arakuni's people all retreated. Langa looked at Lan Wujiang's corpse and fell silent. It seemed that now wasn't the time for the Shui Kuan faction. Lan Wujiang, whom they had painstakingly nurtured, had set up such a good trap, but in the end, it had been easily dismantled by the other side. Ever since they knew that Li Zongjio had come, Langu and the others no longer had the slightest desire to fight. However, there was still a way to vent this matter. It was the people of the 5 poisons. The Elder 5, who was in charge of communicating with Langu, had been hiding in the secret room all this time. When he saw Langu and the others coming down with sullen faces, the Elder 5 was surprised. "What's the situation outside?" The Elder 5 asked. "The situation is very good. I just need your help." "What help?" "Lend me your head." Chapter 1172. Kuan Erasure and the others were going to attack the 5 poisons. Li Zongjio also accompanied them. The strength of the 5 poisons was not simple. It would not be easy to deal with them. It was inevitable that some accidents would occur. Therefore, Li Zongjio also went with them. The reason why they came to Kuan Castle was to help Kuan Erasure. At the same time, it was to prevent Kuan Castle from being wiped out by the Xingyan dynasty. In his previous life, Kuan Castle had been wiped out. After the Xingyan dynasty made a ruthless move, these people had no chance to escape. Once the various factions within the dynasty had stabilized, they would naturally start to take care of these uncertain factors. If one's strength was not strong enough, being wiped out was something that would happen sooner or later. As for the reason, when it came to taking care of you, there was no need for too many reasons. The encirclement operation this time was also led by the Arakuni elder, Lan Yi. At the same time, the Blue Tiger Army and Kuan Castle city guards had also joined forces. This time, they had joined forces under a common name, which was to wipe out the rebels. To kill these people. Most of the experts within the 5 poisons had been sent out. No matter what the current situation was, it had been a long time since they had received any feedback. When the leader of the 5 poisons remembered, he wanted to send someone to investigate the situation. Why was there no progress after such a long time? In the end, he was informed that 2 large armies had come to kill them. The people of Kuan Castle and the people of the Blue Tiger Army. They had joined forces to seal off the entire 5 Poisons Mountain. The 5 poisons were hiding here. They were only 120 li away from Kuan Castle. Advancing at full speed, the army had arrived in less than 4 hours. Some of them had just returned to the 5 poisons because they had just completed the mission of ambushing the Green Dragon Army. This mission was much more difficult than they had imagined. After the successful sneak attack, the 5 poisons had suffered injuries. Although they had expected the Green Dragon Army to be powerful, They did not expect the Green Dragon army to react so quickly. Thus, although they had escaped quickly, they had also suffered great losses and heavy injuries. The remaining troops brought the news back to the Five Poisons. The sect master of the Five Poisons, Gao Hun, was shocked when he heard this news. However, Gao Hun's eyes soon revealed a look of disdain. They are simply seeking their own deaths. I want half of these people to die before they even reach my Five Poisons mountain. The Five Poisons had occupied this place for so many years. They had done a very good job of keeping it secret. At the same time, they had already turned the Five Poisons mountain into a place of no return. To the enemy, they would definitely be able to feel the terror of the Five Poisons mountain. Just the poison array set up on the Five Poisons mountain was enough to bury an army of 100,000. Langu and the others were also in the crowd. At this moment, they did not have the opportunity to inform anyone. They could only obediently follow. Careful, there is a poison array ahead. Li Zongjio raised his hand to stop the advancing troops. Zhao Lei hurriedly gave the order for the people behind to stop. This array is quite exquisite. Li Zongjio glanced at the layout of the poison array in front of him. This array of interlocking rings was not something that could be set up by ordinary people. On the Five Poisons mountain, Gao Hun led the remaining experts of the Five Poisons. At this moment, all of them had gathered on the Five Poisons mountain and were staring at the huge formation below. With so many people gathered together, they could be clearly seen even from several miles away. Sect Master, they are about to enter our Five Poisons Chain Soul tracking array. Once they enter, immediately activate the array. Not a single one of them will be able to escape. Is it so easy to break into my Five Poisons? In addition to the experts of the Five Poisons, there were hundreds of other disciples of the Five Poisons. They all felt as if they were facing a great enemy. They were waiting for Li Zongjio and the others to come up the mountain and die. However, after a while, the army still did not move. Only one person had entered the array and triggered the array's reaction. It seems that these people are not stupid. Since they want to send one person to die first, then we will fulfill their wish. The five of you quickly activate the array. Yes, Sect Master. Immediately, the five elders directly circulated their Yuan Qi and controlled the array. Immediately, the poison array was activated. Kuan Erasher and the others immediately saw black fog rise up in front of them. They did not know where the thick black fog came from. It condensed in an instant and immediately appeared in front of them. Then, everyone continuously retreated and looked at the scene in front of them with shock and vigilance. These gases contain highly toxic poison. You must not breathe them in. To an elemental force cultivator, if they were to inhale this poisonous gas, it would greatly affect their own cultivation. They would rather be slashed by a blade than be poisoned. Ordinary people were also unwilling to choose to cultivate poison techniques. After all, after cultivating this poison, it would definitely have adverse effects on one's body. There might even be some strange changes. However, these poison techniques were a way to quickly increase one's strength. Many people were even more reluctant to give up on them. Who would not want to be able to quickly become an expert? Even if there was a certain amount of risk, so what? Imperial Tutor will be fine, right? When Zhao Lei saw the situation, he could not help but be shocked. Just now, Li Zongjio had already determined that there was a poison array and even a trap in front of them. However, now that the poison array was activated, it was unexpectedly powerful. No one dared to imagine what would happen if the army was trapped in this poison array. No one knew what would happen. The number of people who could survive would definitely not exceed 1%. In fact, it would be considered a lot if 100 people could survive in the end. Don't worry, I will go and check it out, Kuan Erasher said. With the 10,000 slaughter sword in hand, he was already a terrifying existence among the evil gases. Therefore, the poisonous gases would have less effect on Kuan Erasher. Before Lan Yi could agree, Kuan Erasher had already rushed into the poison array. Seeing this, Lan Yi did not say anything. However, Kuan Erashi's action was indeed a little impulsive. Rushing in like this was an extremely dangerous thing to do. However, Kun Arashi's identity was different now. The title of young city lord was not enough. Of course, he needed to do something to increase his reputation in Kun Castle and raise his status and reputation. This was also another reason why Kun Arashir decided to bring people to kill the 5 poisons so quickly. It was equivalent to getting rid of the evil in Kun Castle. At the same time, it would also add a bit of glory to Kun Arashir. Otherwise, it would be difficult for others to accept you with just a name. In front of Li Zongjio, several terrifying poisonous beasts formed by the poisonous gases rushed towards him. Originally, Li Zongjio wanted to burn the poison array in front of him with fire. However, he suddenly became interested in this array. Therefore, he allowed these poisonous beasts to take shape. Chapter 1173. The poisonous beast itself also carried a terrifying power. Coupled with the eruption of its poison, the moment it erupted, it was enough to render everything within a radius of 10,000 miles into a state where not even a blade of grass could grow. Boom! A cloud of poisonous fog appeared in Li Zongjio's palm. More than a dozen poisonous gases exploded around Li Zongjio's body, but Li Zongjio kept reaching out and grasping the poisonous gases in his hand. Found it! Li Zongjio's eyes immediately locked onto a direction in the thick black fog, and he threw a punch in that direction with all his might. Suddenly, the surrounding black poisonous gas could be seen rapidly shrinking. In the end, something fell to the ground with a thud. It was something similar to a bugle horn, but it was only the size of a palm. The terrifying poison array just now had also erupted from this bugle horn. Lan Yi and the others behind also saw Li Zongjio's actions. When they saw that Li Zongjio was safe and sound, and that he had already broken the poison array in less than 10 minutes, everyone was immediately shocked. They also had a deeper understanding of Li Zongjio's strength. This guy was really terrifying. Why are you here too? Li Zongjio looked at Kun Arashir beside him. Obviously, Kun Arashi's body was also injured by the opponent's poison array, but Kun Arashir also quickly forced the poisonous gas out of his body. It turned into a few drops of poisonous blood and dripped on the ground, immediately corroding a big hole in the ground. Aren't I here to help you? Kun Arashir was a little embarrassed. He originally came to help, but he didn't help at all. However, in the confrontation just now, Kun Arashir also became more proficient in using his 1,000 slaughter sword. Originally, Kun Arashir had already completed the City Lord candidate's trial and wanted to return the 1,000 slaughter sword to Li Zongjio, but Li Zongjio just waved his hand and took the 1,000 slaughter sword as a congratulatory gift. Kun Arashir naturally wouldn't be polite. Li Zongjio was never stingy with him, but sometimes he was a little strict and harsh. However, that was also a good thing for Kun Arashir. In fact, Li Zongjio was also guiding Kun Arashir. If it wasn't for Li Zongjio taking care of Kun Arashir, he estimated that in these 2 years, at most, he would have become a relatively simple and ordinary genius in the Heavenly Star Medicine manner. He would have made a little reputation in the Heavenly Star Medicine manner, but it would be quickly covered up. In the end, there wouldn't be much improvement. These achievements couldn't let Kun Arashir go too far, but under the influence of Li Zongjio, Kun Arashi's strength and talent were extremely strong. Even the achievements he had now were not something that ordinary people could achieve. Let's continue forward. Li Zongjio put away the poison array horn. This thing was worth studying in the future. It was equivalent to a kind of array disk. As long as it was activated with spirit energy, it could arrange an array. However, this thing itself was very dangerous. If it wasn't used properly, it could directly envelop oneself. After all, the poison array didn't have eyes. On 5 Poisons Mountain, when the poison array was broken, and even the props used to arrange the array were taken away by Li Zongjio, the 5 elders in charge of controlling the array were dumbfounded. Sect leader, our 5 Poisons horn was taken away by him. What? You are all trash. That is our sect's treasure. How could it be taken away by someone else? You are all trash and rice buckets. After hearing such news, how could they not be angry and furious? Gao Hun was not hungry at all. He killed all the people in front of him with a palm strike. How could they do such a stupid thing? They couldn't even keep an eye on things. This person seems to be extremely proficient in array formations. We didn't even see clearly, and he had already broken the array and taken away our treasures. The elders were also quite aggrieved. No one could have expected such a thing to happen. It was simply too unexpected. It seemed that in the end, the array was no longer controlled by them, but by Li Zongjio. So they invited an expert. It seems like they came prepared. Inform everyone to activate the heaven and earth poison tracking array. All disciples are to enter the array. We must make these people pay the price and know the power of the 5 poisons. Gao Hun ordered. At this point, even if they wanted to escape, it was too late. Moreover, the battle hadn't even started. How could they just run away like this? If they did that, they would be too spineless. Yes, sect leader. Although he had already ordered his subordinates to fight, Gao Hun thought about it carefully. The other party had come prepared, and there was even the shadow of the imperial army. If they were to fight head-on, the consequences would be unimaginable. There might even be some experts hidden in the other party's camp. They had to find an opportunity to escape. He didn't expect that the people of the Shui Kuan faction in Kuan Castle would be so sinister and cunning. They put in effort to help him solve the problem, but in the end, he actually treated the 5 poisons in such a way. This made Gao Hun very unhappy. After he was safe, he must find time to take revenge on the people of the Shui Kuan faction. Lan Yi and Zhao Lei led a large group of people into the depths of the mountains. Suddenly, a white fog rose in the surroundings. Within 5 meters, they couldn't see each other. All of a sudden, a knife slashed at him. Enemy. Suddenly, the people in the army were in chaos. They didn't even know where the cold knife came from. At the beginning, the 2 groups of people were also in chaos. Everyone form groups of 3, back to back, and face the enemy from 3 sides. Zhao Lei's voice traveled through the white fog. Just as Zhao Lei gave the order, many disciples of the 5 poisons raised the poison swords in their hands and stabbed towards Zhao Lei. Every sword was extremely poisonous. Fortunately, the experts by Zhao Lei's side weren't to be trifled with. They blocked the people who rushed forward. The sharp-eyed Zhao Lei saw that someone was actually moving towards Li Zongjio. He immediately pulled out his sword and threw it out. Instantly, the person's head was chopped off. Blood splattered. Protect the imperial tutor. Li Zongjio's strength was strong, and he had enough strength to protect himself. However, it didn't mean that Zhao Lei and the others didn't need to protect Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio was the current imperial tutor. If these small fries needed the help of the imperial tutor, it would be too shameful for the soldiers. Immediately, Zhao Lei's guards surrounded Li Zongjio to protect him. The disciples of the 5 poisons who came from all directions were blocked. Knowing that this was a tough spot, they quickly gave up on dealing with Li Zongjio and continued to attack the others. Everyone, continue forward and rush out of the fog. It was easy to be set up in the mountains. Once the surrounding things couldn't be seen clearly, it would become very dangerous. Sometimes, there might even be situations where people on the same side would attack each other. Chapter 1174. The white fog bewildering formation and the sneak attack of the 5 poisons disciples did not obstruct the advance of the Blue Tiger Army and Kuan Castle's army. After receiving Zhao Lei's order, he became even more determined. He followed the voice and headed up the mountain. Along the way, he killed his way over. In less than an hour, he had already charged to the 5 poison sect's mountain gate. Most of the people managed to kill their way out of the encirclement. Towards the end, the attacks of the 5 poisons became very weak, as if they had encountered too strong of a resistance. Moreover, most of the people who managed to charge out turned into corpses. Sect leader, most of our people are dead. A subordinate ran to Gao Hun to report. Gao Hun naturally knew that the good-for-nothings under the 5 poisons would not be able to stop the advance of these people. However, he did not expect these people to be so determined to kill their way up. What else can we do? Quickly escape from the secret passage. When we regroup in the future and make a comeback, we will kill Kuan Castle. We must make the Xinyan dynasty pay the price. After Gao Hun's righteous speech, he actually told everyone that they were going to retreat. After the remaining people heard this, they felt that it made sense. If they did not retreat now, when would they be able to retreat? Of course, it was better to leave as soon as possible. Go! The 5 poisons directly escaped from the secret passage in the back mountain. Lan Yi and Zhao Lei led the army into the territory of the 5 poisons. Some of the disciples did not even have time to escape before they were all captured. They were put on the ground and easily dealt with. There were also some people who wanted to resist. However, they were all killed as well. In just 1 hour's time, the entire 5 poison sect had been captured and looted clean. Speak, where are your sect leader and the others hiding? Lang Jiao said coldly. Kuan Castle was powerful and did not allow these people of the 5 poisons to disobey. When they killed their way out, these people no longer had the chance to resist. We found a secret passage in the back mountain. Kuan Castle's army came to report. It was not easy for them to kill their way to the mountain gate, but in the end, they did not find the main culprit. If they did not capture a few important people, how could they report back? If they brought all of these people back, it would not be enough to report back. No one would be convinced. No matter what. Zhao Lei and Lan immediately led their people and killed their way out. Li Zongjio strolled around the 5 poisons. Basically, everything that could be moved had been captured and detained in the main hall. Li Zongjio was extremely curious about how the 5 poisons were able to take out something like the 5 poisons bugle horn. He used his mental power to search the area of the 5 poisons and immediately found a forbidden area that originally belonged to the 5 poisons. Come here, where is this place? Li Zongjio casually pointed at a person of the 5 poisons, who was immediately detained by the Blue Tiger Army. When the Imperial Tutor asked questions, if they did not answer, they would be slapped. The thing in front of them seemed to be an altar made of stone. Moreover, there were extremely complicated patterns engraved on the walls. Quickly reply to the Lord. A soldier said fiercely. He raised his hand and was about to slap the person. The person was so frightened that he nodded his head repeatedly. Replying to the Lord, this is the altar bestowed by the god of our sect. Only the sect leader and the 5 elders can open it. It can only be opened once a year. There will be treasures or formation books inside. There was such a magical place. The soldier immediately slapped him across the face. Don't talk nonsense with me. If you don't behave, I will chop off your head right now. Since the Lord asked you a question, you should answer honestly. The soldier's fierce appearance caused the person to feel a considerable amount of fear. He immediately trembled in fear. I don't dare to lie, I don't dare to lie. What I said is absolutely true, absolutely true. This person of the 5 poisons also repeatedly shouted. All right, take him away. Li Zongjio waved his hand. With this identity and status, it was easier to do things. All he needed to do was to give an order. Li Zongjio didn't believe that there was some kind of mysterious power that could automatically spit out treasures. Even after 3,000 years, he still wouldn't believe it. The only explanation was that there was something below that could store treasures. Li Zongjio injected his own yuan power into the formation in front of him. Immediately, the candles around the altar seemed to be constantly vibrating. Boom! With the injection of yuan power, the candles also lit up involuntarily. Immediately, Li Zongjio increased the injection of yuan power. In an instant, it became abnormally fierce and terrifying. The candlesticks in the altar immediately surged with extremely bright light. The candles were constantly being consumed. It was enough to see that this kind of power was constantly condensing. At the same time, there seemed to be a force in the altar that was being activated. However, there seemed to be a layer of restriction. In fact, this restriction also came from a formation. Li Zongjio directly took out the black dragon hammer. I'm too lazy to bother with you. I just want to see what exactly is inside you. Then, Li Zongjio directly hammered down with the black dragon hammer in his hand. Boom! The power that erupted from the black dragon hammer shook the entire mountain range. The 5 poisons mountain shook violently. Some of the buildings that originally belonged to the 5 poisons also collapsed at this moment. It was as if this altar was the vein of the entire 5 poisons mountain. If this vein was destroyed, it was equivalent to the entire 5 Poisons Mountain being destroyed. However, Li Zongjio did not care about this. So what if this 5 Poisons Mountain was destroyed? Today, he wanted to see what kind of ability this thing had that it actually dared to go against Li Zongjio. Boom! Another hammer strike. This time, the mysterious altar was also blasted into smithereens. Boom! The entire altar was directly torn apart. At this moment, a crack appeared on the wall that was engraved with strange patterns. Following this situation in front of him, Li Zongjio also smiled slightly. What kind of rules and restrictions are there? As long as you have enough power, you can break the rules and break all restrictions. Now, although Li Zongjio's power did not dare to say that he could ignore the rules between heaven and earth, at the very least, this mere altar in the mountain could not stop Li Zongjio's footsteps. Below the altar seemed to be an empty world. A dark and dim power swallowed the surrounding light. In this endless darkness, a ball of light suddenly surged out. It was a glowing object. When this glowing object appeared, Li Zongjio directly reached out and snatched it. Swoosh! It was heavy. From its appearance, it seemed to be a book. Chapter 1175. It was a book. Li Zongjio quietly waited for the light from the book in his hand to dissipate. Then he saw the contents of the book. General Book on Arrays? When Li Zongjio saw these words, his eyes immediately lit up. He never thought that he would be able to find this incomplete book on arrays under such circumstances. It was simply a lucky hit. Li Zongjio immediately flipped through the contents of the book. He found that the first half of the book was exactly the same as the one in his hand. However, the latter half and 1/3 of the first half could be flipped through. Moreover, the contents that appeared were all new. With Li Zongjio's knowledge, the contents recorded in the latter half of the book had already surpassed the limits of the Holy Martial Continent. It seems that this thing belongs to the Holy Martial Realm. Li Zongjio looked at the General Book on Arrays in his hand. There were still 3 pages missing. According to the description, one of the 3 pages had turned into the 5 Poisons horn in Li Zongjio's hand. It seemed that the contents of the General Book on Arrays contained some treasures on arrays. It was even possible that the book itself was a treasure on arrays. Only by deciphering the arrays on it could one obtain the contents and treasures within. Li Zongjio had never come across such a miraculous method in his previous life. As for the incomplete book on arrays in Li Zongjio's hands, it was only a copy. Li Zongjio put away the General Book on Arrays in his hand. At the very least, he would have something to study. The remaining 2 pages that are missing should also be treasures that belong to this book. Since it's mine, how can I let others take it away? Li Zongjio immediately sneered. The 5 poisons had brought him great joy. It even made Li Zongjio a little excited. At this moment, at the foot of the mountain, Gao Hun and the others were besieging them. They were also fighting with Lan Yi and the others. The 5 elders beside Gao Hun were very powerful. Moreover, Gao Hun had an item in his hand that emitted light and aura that could create illusions in this space. Within a radius of 100 li, illusions could appear at any time, anywhere. This made it impossible for Lan Yi and the other experts to take down the other party. Langu was also fighting with all his might. Suddenly, Lan Yi discovered that the surrounding space had changed. The 5 poisons, Gao Hun, and 2 other elder-level experts had appeared. And there was only Langu by Lan Yi's side. Does your Lan family have to be so ruthless? Today, I'll fight you to the death. Lan Yi sneered as he looked at the 3 people in front of him. Naturally, it wouldn't be a problem for the 2 people on his side to hold on. He still had this much confidence. A huge desolate Kuan appeared behind Lan Yi. As the desolate Kuan's brilliance flowed, it turned into a pair of wings and stuck to Lan Yi's back. At this moment, Lan Yi's speed had increased by dozens of times. You 5 poisons are too presumptuous. You're too arrogant. Today, you'll definitely die. Lan Yi said, I think the one who's going to die is you. As soon as Gao Hun's voice fell, Langu, who had been beside Lan Yi, attacked. The sword attacked, and it was a poisonous sword that carried a highly poisonous substance. The sword stabbed Lan Yi's wing. Immediately, the original spirit in Lan Yi's body seemed to have gone berserk. It quickly escaped, and in the end, it twisted and turned back to its original state with a bang. Lan Yi was seriously injured. He spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't believe it, but at this moment he was extremely vexed. How could he believe this kind of thing? After all, the 5 poisons were recruited by Langu's group. I forgot to tell you. This sword is called the Vitality Devouring Sword. Anyone who is stabbed by this Vitality Devouring Sword will have their original spirit greatly damaged, and their original spirit destroyed. The way I see it, that sword strike just now is enough to destroy your primordial spirit. Langu laughed loudly. Not only did he want to destroy these Arakuni people, but he also wanted to destroy their original spirits. In the future, there would only be Xue Kuan's branch left in Kuan Castle. Wouldn't that be great? Xue Kuan's branch was the only one in Kuan Castle. Xue Kuan was the strongest original spirit. He was the one who could obtain the true inheritance. Hee, you're indeed my good friend. Gao Hun stretched out his hand and waved. The 2 elders by his side actually disappeared. They had been nothing more than illusions. The true meaning of this battle lay in Lan Gu's sword. Killing Lan Yi was equivalent to severely injuring the Arakuni branch. There wouldn't be any more problems in the future. There wouldn't be any more experts appearing in Arakuni. The remaining group of people didn't pose any threat to Langu. He could slowly eliminate them. You guys quickly escape. After I take control of Kuan Castle, I'll arrange for you guys to come back. Langu said indifferently. Good, you're indeed the vice sect leader of the 5 poisons. Ha. Gao Hun laughed loudly. At the same time, Langu prepared to stab Lan Yi, who was still in a state of shock, to death. At this moment, the surrounding space suddenly shattered. Then an extremely domineering sword chi was suddenly released. Boom! Thousand slaughter extermination. Terrifying sword aura swept out, breaking the illusory barrier right away. It was none other than Lan Kuan who was charging at him. Elder, Langu, you're courting death. Kuan Erasure saw Lan Yi lying on the ground. When he saw Langu's actions, he knew that Langu wanted to kill Elder Lan Yi. Fortunately, Kuan Erasure came in time. It's all because of you, you damned thing. You ruined my great plan. Immediately, Langu waved the Origin Devourer sword in his hand and charged towards Kuan Erasure. Kuan Erasure didn't hold back. In terms of weapons, Kuan Arashi's Thousand Slaughter sword was obviously stronger than his opponent's Origin Devourer sword. However, Langu was able to suppress Kuan Erasure in terms of elemental energy. After a moment of confrontation, Kuan Erasure was forced back. The Xue Kuan faction has betrayed us. Everyone retreat first. Kuan Erasure helped Lan Yi up. The expert from the White Deer Mansion, the spirit of the sword, blocked Langu and Gao Hun by himself. Retreat. Senior spirit of the sword had a broken sword in his hand, but it was able to release an extremely terrifying aura. Even the 2 experts in front of him had no choice but to retreat. I'd like to see where you can escape to. Zhao Lei was covering everyone's retreat. However, the array seemed to have changed the surrounding space. They couldn't even recognize their surroundings and were trapped in the array, unable to escape. Not good, we're all trapped in the array. Senior spirit of the sword used the Thousand Slaughter sword. Kuan Erasure threw the Thousand Slaughter sword in his hand to the spirit of the sword. The strongest person present was the spirit of the sword. Although the attributes of their weapons were different, they could display the same power. The spirit of the sword, holding the Thousand Slaughter sword, also felt a surge of power. However, before the spirit of the sword made a move, a terrifying power came from the sky. It was as if the sky above them had become a glass cover. At this moment, there was a power that was crushing the glass cover. Boom! The illusion was broken. Chapter 1176. The illusory space was broken. At this moment, a mirror in Gao Hun's arms suddenly emitted an extremely hot energy, directly forcing Gao Hun to throw the mirror out of his arms. Damn it! The energy that erupted just now almost burned the skin on Gao Hun's chest. Is this the second treasure, the illusion disillusionment mirror? Li Zongjio stretched out his hand, and the mirror that originally belonged to Gao Hun flew directly to Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio caught it. He held it in his hand. The illusion disillusionment mirror seemed to want to struggle, but it was restrained by Li Zongjio's tyrannical mental strength, unable to move. My illusion disillusionment mirror, Gao Hun exclaimed. When he looked at Li Zongjio in front of him, he felt a sense of dread. The aura of this person in front of him was familiar. Wasn't this the person who had taken away his 5 poison horn? Now, this person had chased after him again and even took away his illusion disillusionment mirror. Li Zongjio, do you really think that no one in this world can take you down? Lan Gu was very unhappy with Li Zongjio's sudden appearance. Did Li Zongjio really think that he could go anywhere in the world? Did he think that no one could stop him from doing what he wanted? Did he really think that no one could stop him? Was he invincible? Could it be that he had such a beautiful dream? Is he Li Zongjio? I have heard of your name long ago. Today, I want to see if you are really as powerful as the legends say. Gao Hun also looked at Li Zongjio. Looking at the two of them, it seemed that they still had some tricks up their sleeves. Lan Yi and the others were seriously injured. At this moment, Kuan Erisher and the others were also guarding Lan Yi's side. Zhao Lei also brought a few experts to kill. Who would have thought that these people who came to chase after them would end up in such a dangerous situation? In the illusory realm just now, they were not facing a few people, but an army of thousands of people. No one dared to get close to them. They were also extremely afraid. After a few rounds of fighting, they barely managed to save their lives. Later, they found out that it was actually an illusion. What other tricks do you have? Just use them. Li Zongjio immediately smiled disdainfully. Then he signaled the people in front of him to attack. Gao Hun and Lan Gu stood side by side. Behind them, there were also 5 elders supporting them. The aura of the 7 people was quite strong. When the people of the Lan family saw that Lan Gu had actually betrayed them, they also completely recognized the nature of this Lan Gu. However, after all, Lan Gu could not represent the entire Xuekuan faction. Even the 2 elders of the Xuekuan faction, Lan Shouxin and Lan Shouyu, did not dare to believe that this Lan Gu in front of them was actually the vice-sect master of the 5 poisons. This was something that they had never thought of before. 5 poison scripture, heavenly poison and earthly destruction chi. Immediately, the 6 people in front of them condensed their yuan chi and hit Lan Gu's body at the same time. At this moment, Lan Gu's body released a terrifying aura. With Lan Gu's strength, it was difficult for him to withstand the injection of such a huge amount of energy. However, the yuan devouring sword in his hand had a very domineering capacity. No need. Li Zongjio suddenly raised his hand and gestured behind him. It turned out that Senior Spirit of the Sword saw that Li Zongjio was fighting empty-handed and wanted to return the Myriad Slaughter sword to Li Zongjio. After all, it could be seen from the clash just now that the power of this Myriad Slaughter sword was above that of the Yuan Devouring sword. If it could be used better, it would definitely be able to break through the Yuan Devouring sword. The Yuan Devouring sword. The fact that Li Zongjio actually dared to stay still and wait for them to condense their moves made Lan Gu and the others very excited. Those who saw this move for the first time would usually be at a disadvantage. Once the Yuan Devouring sword was used, it would be a competition of the Yuan Qi of both sides. On Li Zongjio's side, there was only one person. Even if you started cultivating in your mother's womb and ate elixirs every day, there was still a limit to your 10 to 20 years of time. However, there were a total of 7 people on their side, and all of them were at the primitive emperor realm. The 7 primitive emperors attacked. It wasn't a competition of killing moves or treasures, but pure yuan qi. Pure accumulation of strength. Let's see if you're afraid. Li Zongjio's move would definitely kill him. The few of them were quite excited. After killing Li Zongjio, he would be able to take back all of his treasures. By then, these people in front of them would no longer be a threat, and they would all be killed. The sword qi rolled towards Li Zongjio. When the sword qi touched Li Zongjio, it turned into a long whip like a long rope. A flexible force bound Li Zongjio and began to absorb the yuan qi in Li Zongjio's body. That's it. Li Zongjio naturally saw that this sword was a sword technique that focused on devouring. The main point wasn't to kill, but to eat. Therefore, there was no need to resist at all. Because no matter what, these people in front of him couldn't possibly be his opponent. Not to mention 7, even if 70 of them worked together, their yuan qi wouldn't be Li Zongjio's opponent. Boom! As Li Zongjio's voice fell, a tyrannical force erupted from the Origin Devourer sword. Langu, Gao Hun, and the others' faces suddenly changed. What's going on? Why did it produce a backlash? At this moment, the Origin Devourer sword was like a scale. It would lean towards whichever side was heavier. Therefore, the strength of Langu and the others was constantly rushing towards Li Zongjio's direction. Boom! The Origin Devourer sword really didn't recognize anyone. Gao Hun and the others wanted to break free, but Li Zongjio suddenly increased his strength, causing the speed of the yuan qi to become faster. Langu roared in grief and despair. He felt that the strength that he had painstakingly cultivated was actually being sucked away by the enemy in an instant. All his efforts were now in vain. He was about to become a cripple. Bang! Bang! Gao Hun gritted his teeth and directly blew off his arm that was slapping on Langu's body. Seeing this, the other 5 elders followed suit. They were lucky enough to escape this calamity. However, just as these people's strength disappeared, Langu's flesh was also easily devoured by the Origin Devourer sword. It was once again turned into energy and transferred into Li Zongjio's body. Moreover, the Origin Devourer sword was also very tactful. It directly flew in front of Li Zongjio. From the posture of the sword, it seemed to have voluntarily submitted. You are quite clever. Li Zongjio grabbed the Origin Devourer sword. At this moment, Langu was already dead, leaving only a shriveled and wrinkled human skin. The rest of Gao Hun and the others were also seriously injured. More than half of their strength had been sucked away just now. Coupled with the loss of an arm, they were even more injured. Most importantly, these people no longer had any other tricks up their sleeves. Kuan Erasure held the 1,000 slaughter sword again and took the lead to kill the people of the 5 poisons. A moment later, the 5 poisons, Gao Hun and the others' heads fell to the ground. Chapter 1177. The problem of the 5 poisons also came to an end today. During this period of time, the problem of the Shui Kuan faction wanting to become independent was also solved satisfactorily. With the death of Langu, the troublemaker, everything returned to normal. If Langu was still alive, he would definitely be scared silly by what happened in Kuan Castle. It should have been the heavily poisoned castellan of Kuan Castle, Lan Yu. He was miraculously revived with full health. Although he couldn't deal with the situation for the time being, at least his injuries had recovered. It was just that he shouldn't overwork himself. He only needed a certain amount of time to recover to his peak condition. After waking up, Lan Yu found out about the recent events from Lan Tianing. He was extremely grateful for Li Zongjio's arrival. If it wasn't for Li Zongjio, Lan Yu wouldn't have been the only one to die. So many lives of Arakuni's people were lost here. They might even have died. As for the remaining members of the Shui Kuan faction, Lan Yu also gave severe punishments. At the same time, he promoted Kuan Erasure to the elder's seat. With Kuan Arashi's achievements in the past few days and the powerful backing of Li Zongjio, it was very easy for him to get an elder's seat. Zhao Lei also sent his army to patrol the city. In the end, they retreated safely. This time, the main culprit of the rebellion had been caught. There was no need to continue guarding the city. He could even return early to report back. However, before Zhao Lei left, he went to Li Zongjio and expressed his desire to join the White Deer Mansion. If you want to join the White Deer Mansion, you have to prove your strength first. If you can settle the Hua family, I will let you join. Li Zongjio said calmly. In Li Zongjio's eyes, the Hua family was nothing more than a smelly bug that liked to pop out of its stomach. They posed no threat to him at all. However, Li Zongjio wouldn't reject such ambitious people from joining the White Deer Mansion. There were always benefits to being stronger. As long as these people were loyal enough, Li Zongjio wouldn't be soft-hearted if there were any signs of rebellion. Moreover, he had ways to deal with these people. Before you join, you must first have the strength to join. In front of Li Zongjio, the Hua family was just a small bug that could hardly turn over a new leaf. However, in front of Zhao Lei, the Hua family was still a colossus. Even now, most of the Hua family's experts had been killed. They wouldn't be easy to deal with. However, just as Li Zongjio had thought, if he couldn't help the White Deer Mansion resolve its problems and resolve these problems, he would be forced to join the White Deer Mansion. Could it be that the White Deer Mansion wanted him to join them for a meal? This wasn't an easy opportunity, but it was also an opportunity. Yes, Zhao Lei. Don't worry. As long as the Hua family is dealt with, I will take care of the follow-up problems. I will give you 1 month. Within this month, you will be able to mobilize the resources of the White Deer Mansion. If you can't complete this task in a month, don't blame me for being merciless. Li Zongjio said calmly. This method already greatly reduced the difficulty. It was equivalent to Zhao Lei joining the White Deer Mansion in a month. However, he now had to complete a trial mission. If he couldn't complete it, then he could only apologize. Thank you, Sir Imperial Tutor. The Imperial Tutor wasn't serious at all. After all, the Imperial Tutor's title was for the sake of the entire Xingyan dynasty. However, Li Zongjio didn't seem to have considered this aspect. When he did things, he didn't think that he was the Imperial Tutor of the Xingyan dynasty. He only wanted to achieve his goal. Zhao Lei immediately led the Blue Tiger army to withdraw. At the same time, he started thinking of ways to deal with the Hua family. Based on what Li Zongjio had said, he wanted to deal with the Hua family. First, he wanted to completely remove the Hua family's position in the army. This way, the Hua family wouldn't be able to pose a threat. It would be difficult for him to control the Green Dragon army. Second, he wanted to get rid of the entire Hua family. This was the only way to avoid future troubles. The Hua family has always been ruthless. This time, let's see how capable you are. Li Zongjio stayed in Kuan Castle for a few more days. The danger of Kuan Castle had been temporarily resolved. However, there were still more important matters waiting for Kuan Erasure to deal with. 2 days later, Kuan Erasure expressed his thoughts at a family meeting. He wanted to propose marriage to Emperor Xingyan. This matter caused a huge uproar at the family meeting. Even Lan Yuyan looked at Kuan Erasure strangely. You're really something, kid. You actually managed to hook up with the princess. Not bad. You're bold enough. You're like a man. Even his father, Lan Yu, couldn't help but praise him. Of course, it was a happy thing for his child to be able to find someone he loved. However, this person instantly gave Lan Yu a headache. Of all people, it just had to be the princess of the Xingyan dynasty. No, you can't do this. The great elder, Lan Yi, immediately stopped him. Langu was already dead. The position of the great elder was vacant, and Lan Yi directly filled it. Our relationship with the Xingyan dynasty has always been turbulent. If we establish a relationship with the royal family will definitely be suspicious. Moreover, the royal family will definitely not agree. Lan Yi said. Lan Yi saw through this matter very clearly. It wasn't easy to solve this problem. After all, this problem existed in the first place. Moreover, this problem could worsen at any time. Great elder, you're wrong. Why not? Don't tell me that I, the future mayor of Kuan Castle, am not worthy of the princess of the Xingyan dynasty? Lan Yuyan had a small opinion in his heart. In the hearts of the Lan family, he was obviously placed in a very high position. He even felt that he was incomparably arrogant. After all, the glory of Kuan Castle was not something that ordinary people could imagine. To be able to survive between the two dynasties, this kind of strength was enough to prove everything. That's not the case. However, this matter still needs to be carefully considered. Elder Lan Yi had yet to recover from his serious injuries, and now seemed a little weak. He couldn't make a fierce argument, but everyone believed in Kuan Arashi's potential. Lan Yu furrowed his brows. Then he looked at the figure sitting in the corner. During the meeting today, he wondered why Lan Kuan had specially invited this person. At the very least, he should have asked for this person's opinion. Elderly, what do you think about my son's matter? In the entire Lan family, no one dared to look down on Li Zongjio. They didn't even dare to show any arrogance in front of Li Zongjio. As for why, you only need to experience how Li Zongjio made them feel these days to know. The existence of such a powerhouse was simply heaven-defying. HM? My thoughts? My thoughts are the same as Lan Yun's. Li Zongjio was wholeheartedly studying the formation. Fortunately, Li Zongjio's mental power was strong enough, so he could recall the information he had previously captured. Lan Yuyan didn't expect Li Zongjio to give such an answer. Was it because Li Zongjio was also paying attention to her? Suddenly receiving Li Zongjio's support made Lan Yuyan feel an indescribable feeling in her heart. Lan Yuyan didn't care about other people's approval, but Li Zongjio's approval was like a great affirmation. Father, elders, don't worry. This time, I only want to obtain a title. Leave the rest to me. Kuan Erasher said. Before this, Kuan Erasher was just a nobody in the Lan family of Kuan Castle. Who knew who he was? He wasn't even an elder. But now, Kuan Arashi's identity and status had been confirmed and affirmed. At the same time, he had also obtained the approval of Kuan Castle. Naturally, he had a title and status. He could more or less be considered a match. If he was mentioned by others, he would at least have a title. This was Kuan Arashi's plan. Now, Kuan Erasher had become the successor of the Castellan. He was the true and legitimate young Castellan of Kuan Castle. Alright, I'll go back and take 3 Spirit of Kuan Stone from the family's treasury as your betrothal gift. Lan Yu also laughed loudly. In fact, as long as Li Zongjio supported him, this matter would most likely not be a problem. The latter's identity as the imperial tutor wasn't just for show. If anyone wanted to compete at this time, they wouldn't be giving face to Li Zongjio. Chapter 1178. By the time most of the matters in Kuan Castle had been settled, the two of them finally left. The two of them were finally about to leave. Saber Soul and Bei Ku followed them. Kuan Castle also had a flying center. Originally, they wanted to use the most luxurious flying boat for the 4 of them to return home. However, Li Zongjio refused. He was not the kind of person who was extravagant and wasteful. Elderly, if you have time in the future, please come visit our Kuan Castle more often. Lan Yuyan was reluctant to part with them before they left. I will. Li Zongjio nodded and said. Then, Lan Yin looked at Kuan Erasher. Kid, don't cause trouble for elderly when you're outside. Otherwise, I won't forgive you. Lan Yuyan threatened Kuan Erasher. However, such a threat did not hurt him at all. He knew that this was Lan Yuyan's concern. Don't worry, sister. The flying boat rose into the sky. Lan Yuyan watched as the flying boat gradually rose into the sky and disappeared into the distance. At this moment, she even had the urge to jump onto the flying boat and leave with Li Zongjio. However, she suppressed her own excitement. Perhaps she was just a lowly passerby in front of Li Zongjio. A person like Li Zongjio would naturally have countless outstanding women around him. How could she, Lan Yuyan, be qualified? However, after meeting Li Zongjio, it was obvious that Lan Yuyan's standards for choosing a husband had increased by another level. It wouldn't be easy to find one in a short period of time. The flying boat returned to the sacred Flame Royal City. The news of the battle at Kuan Castle had reached Emperor Xingyan. Although he was fooled by Kuan Castle this time with the 5 poisons, he would have to be fully prepared the next time he wanted to deal with Kuan Castle. Your Majesty, I advise you not to agree to the request of the 10 Swords sect from the Tianyan dynasty. Emperor Xingyan was already angry. He felt that he had been tricked by the people of Kuan Castle. Moreover, the Hua family seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. Just the important members alone had suffered heavy casualties. Naturally, they pushed all the blame to the 5 Poison sect for everything that had happened. The other members of the Green Dragon army were not from the Hua family. They did not have the guts to challenge Li Zongjio's authority. If Li Zongjio came to settle the score with them in the future, they would feel a strong sense of regret. Therefore, after a series of collusion, they finally unanimously targeted the 5 poisons. Anyway, now that the 5 poisons had been destroyed, There was naturally no evidence. However, the Hua family also understood that Li Zongjio was dealing with them. Several members of the Hua family who were still in the army suddenly received a summons from the judges. They said that someone had reported their misconduct in the army and that they were immediately suspended from their duties for investigation. The Hua family was simply furious about this matter. Who was the one behind all this? Who was the one who brought out so much evidence and alerted the people from the judicial division? There must be someone behind all of this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be at such a loss. However, Sacred Flame Great Emperor was only aware of these things after the fact. Obviously, someone was manipulating these things, and the information was only transmitted to him at the end. There was only one person who had the ability to do this, and was able to deceive everyone like this. Li Zongjio. Today, he heard the military advisor repeatedly persuade him not to agree to the marriage proposal of the Ten-Sword sect. It even made Emperor Xingyan think that the military advisor had been bribed by Li Zongjio. Military advisor, I respect you as a senior, so I will listen to your words. However, it does not mean that I will listen to everything you say. If you are close to Li Zongjio, I advise you to quit while you are ahead. Emperor Xingyan glanced at the military advisor. The military advisor also shook his head. It was obvious that Emperor Xingyan had misunderstood him. However, he did not care about this matter. As long as he could prevent Li Zongjio from getting angry, it would not be good if he destroyed the Holy Flame Imperial family in a fit of anger. However, because of the existence of Princess Jingon, he would more or less give face. He would not be killed. However, he did not know if he would be able to keep his position. Just 3 days ago, the Ten-Sword sect, which was ranked third among the top 10 sects of the Tianyan dynasty, had sent a lot of betrothal gifts and a marriage proposal. They wanted the young master of the Ten-Sword sect to marry Princess Jingon. If this marriage was successful, it meant that the Ten-Sword sect would obtain the resources of the Xingyan dynasty. In the future, they would be able to start a new journey in the Xingyan dynasty. Obviously, the Ten-Sword sect was ambitious. They wanted to expand their strength and continue to develop. The Xingyan dynasty could also open a path in the Tianyan dynasty. For Emperor Xingyan, this seemed to be the best choice. Everything that Li Zongjio had was given to him by Emperor Xingyan. The name of the imperial tutor, the name of the White Deer Mansion, and even the Luoxia city were all part of the Xingyan dynasty's territory. If he wanted to take them back, it would be just a matter of words. How could this Li Zongjio be arrogant and dare to stand on the opposite side of Emperor Xingyan? In the heart of Sacred Flame Emperor, Li Zongjio was clearly an ungrateful person. Moreover, he was a traitor. He was simply a despicable person. As long as he found an opportunity, he would definitely take down Li Zongjio. He would never allow a person to challenge the authority of the imperial family. The airship shuttled through the clouds. Finally, they arrived at the Sacred Flame Imperial City. Once again stepping into the Sacred Flame Imperial City, Kun Arashi's heart was also quite excited. It seemed that there was something incredible waiting for him to accomplish. He was burdened with a heavy sense of mission. But as soon as he landed, he found a restaurant to have a meal. But he heard that everyone in the city seemed to be discussing the marriage between Princess Jingon and the Ten-Sword sect's young master. He had only left for a few days, but such a thing happened. Did they have to find someone to deal with him, Kun Arashir? Brother, what do you mean by the marriage alliance you mentioned just now? A person who was talking loudly in the restaurant was suddenly stopped by Kun Arashir. He couldn't react, but when he saw that Kun Arashi's expression seemed a little strange, he immediately retracted his anger. Cough, cough, you guys are from other places, right? You don't know about this yet. I heard that a group of envoys from the Ten-Sword sect came to the Tianyan dynasty. The purpose of these people is to marry their young master. I heard that his surname is Yi and he is here to propose marriage to the imperial family. We only have one princess, so they must be here to propose marriage to Princess Jingon. When Kun Arashir heard this, he directly smashed the table with his palm. Fuck, where did this Ten-Sword sect come from? I'm going to beat them into shit. Kun Arashir was furious. But the table he smashed was someone else's. Just when these people reacted and were about to get angry, Kun Erasure was too arrogant. He could have smashed anyone's table, but he smashed theirs. Can't you let us eat? Don't be too arrogant, brother. Hey, I say, why are you? However, before that person could finish his words, he saw many people gathered downstairs. Moreover, someone quickly came upstairs and arrived in front of Li Zongjio. Young master, you're back. The person who came was Taifai. If he didn't bring at least 100 people with him, he would be embarrassed to go out. This lineup was necessary. Things like face couldn't be neglected. Young Master Kun Erasure. Congratulations to young Master Kun Erasure for becoming the young master of Kun Castle. Taifai was quite well informed. He actually already knew that Kun Erasure had become the young master of Kun Castle. This wasn't strange. After all, the White Deer Mansion wasn't a freeloader. Let's go. We'll take some back to eat. Li Zongjio saw that Kun Erasure couldn't eat anymore. Then he would go back first and have a good discussion to see what the situation was. Young master, please. Li Zongjio walked in front of everyone, and Kun Erasure followed closely behind. Taifai left one person behind to compensate the diner whose table was smashed by Kun Erasure, as well as the inn's losses. Not to mention smashing a table, even tearing down the entire inn wouldn't be a problem. However, Taifai had taught his subordinates to follow the rules from the start. They couldn't be arrogant and unrestrained. That way, they would be destroyed sooner or later. Now, they naturally managed it very well. The people in the inn were all stunned. Who's this? Why is there such a big lineup? You don't know, right? Hey, that person just now was the new young master of Kun Castle, Kun Erasure. It's said that the young master of Kun Castle is also interested in our Princess Jingon. No wonder. Chapter 1179. Back at the White Deer Mansion. Xiao Zhao was surprised to see the flustered and exasperated Kun Erasure. Young master. Yes, come to the conference hall. Li Zongjio and the others sat at the table while Xiao Zhao ordered someone to bring the information. I've already prepared the information when I heard that young master has returned. Ten Sword Sect is one of the top 10 sects in the Tianyan dynasty. According to the public opinion, Ten Sword Sect is at least ranked third in strength. Their enemy is the Sky-Water Sect. There are many conflicts between the two sections. The team sent to the Xingyan dynasty to propose marriage includes the young master of Ten Sword Sect, Xia Chuanxiu, who is a first-grade origin emperor, and the unparalleled Sword Emperor, who is ranked third in the Ten Sword Sect. There are also some disciples who are not strong enough to be feared. Xiao Zhao listed all the information clearly. Kun Erasure had a very clear and intuitive feeling. Unparalleled Sword Emperor? Li Zongjio was bewildered. Back when Li Zongjio had slaughtered his way to the Ten Sword Sect, the only person who looked decent in the entire sect was this unparalleled Sword Venerable. However, it seemed like this old fart was only at the Sword Emperor realm. There was nothing to be afraid of. Young master, do you know this person? We've fought before, but that was in the past. Li Zongjio said. Everyone was shocked to hear Li Zongjio's words. How long ago was it? The Supreme Sword Emperor was quite famous in the Tianyan dynasty. It was definitely not that simple. So fierce? We've studied this Supreme Sword Emperor before. His sword Dao is very profound. If we're talking about the famous swordsmen in the Shengwu continent, the Supreme Sword Emperor is one of them. Nangong Wuji said. But he might not be your opponent. After all, Li Zongjio had the record of killing a Supreme Sword Emperor. Just this record alone was enough to make many people revere him. This concept was not easy to understand. The purpose of the Ten Sword Sect's trip is definitely not as simple as a marriage alliance. I heard that the Ten Sword Sect is also making moves in the Tianyan dynasty. They are more likely to borrow the power of the Xingyan dynasty. They want to shake the status of the other sects in the Xingyan dynasty. The Heavenly Water Sect is the first to bear the brunt. Xiao Zhao analyzed. Not only did he have information about the Xingyan dynasty, but even some information about the Tianyan dynasty was also under his control. Only by combining the complete information would he be able to analyze the situation correctly. So, They want to use Kun Erasure as a stumbling block? Li Zongjio said. If that was the case, Kun Erasure had indeed become a stumbling block for the other party. Unfortunately, if the person Kun Erasure loved was not the Princess Jingon, these people could do whatever they wanted. They thought that they could dominate the world by making some messy combinations. In fact, these people did not have the strength to do so. If it was Li Zongjio, it would not be so troublesome. In addition, young master, there have been some unusual movements in the city recently. To a certain extent, our people are being monitored. It seems to be from the imperial family. Moreover, we have collected enough evidence to prove that Emperor Xian secretly mobilized the Dragon Guard. The Dragon Guard? Does the Dragon Guard really exist? Kun Erasure could not sit still. He immediately exclaimed and looked at Xiao Zhao in disbelief. The surrounding people also widened their eyes because this was very shocking news. For many years, the Dragon Guard was just a legend. No one had really seen the Dragon Guard. However, legends about the Dragon Guard were endless. The most direct ones were these Dragon Guard. It was rumored that the Dragon Guard clan was the bravest soldier during the founding war of the first great emperor. They were extremely loyal, so these people were all conferred the title of Dragon Guard. All the descendants of the hidden dragon clan were protected by the imperial family. They were secretly trained from a young age and shouldered heavy responsibilities. The purpose was to eliminate the dangers and difficulties in the process of the dynasty's advancement. However, as the ultimate force, they were only sent out in the most dangerous times. They were equivalent to the imperial family's secret weapon. Now that the country had been founded for more than 300 years, the great emperor had changed several times, but there was no news of the Dragon Guard clan taking action. However, recently, Xiao Zhao collected information that proved that the Dragon Guard clan had been mobilized. To be able to hide for more than 300 years, it was enough to show the importance and degree of protection that the imperial family placed on them. If it was not a last resort, they would definitely not be allowed to show themselves. Dragon Guard? There are only a dozen people in total. It's nothing special. When Li Zongjio heard this Dragon Guard clan, he smiled disdainfully. This kind of thing was very secretive in the eyes of ordinary people, but Li Zongjio had already seen it in his previous life. To be precise, these Dragon Guard clan were the descendants of the founding heroes of the country. However, that group of people had been completely hidden at that time. There were too many founding heroes. Some of them had names, but some of them were secretly covered up. They became a force that secretly protected the Xingyan dynasty. This was very smart. Li Zongjio had only come into contact with a few of them in his previous life. There was nothing special about them. They were slightly stronger because the cultivation materials were provided by the imperial family. Naturally, they were not bad. However, the cultivation of that group of experts was born from blood and fire. In the later two generations, each lineage was not as good as the other, so the number of people decreased. Perhaps there were more people now, but after 2,000 years, this group of people was only left with a dozen people. Of course, what Li Zongjio did not say was that these people were all in the supremacy realm. Although they were just people who had just entered the supremacy realm. In front of Li Zongjio back then, they were just an eyesore. A gentle blow was enough to extinguish these people. You know about it? Kun Erasure looked at Li Zongjio in surprise. It seemed that there was nothing that Li Zongjio did not know about these secretive things. You will know when you reach the supremacy realm. Li Zongjio could only say this to Kun Erasure. Kun Erasure also rolled his eyes at the latter. When you reach the supremacy realm, how long will you have to cultivate? I didn't expect to recognize such a cheap boss so easily. Did I step on dog shit back then? Recently, the imperial family's attitude has been targeting our White Deer Mansion. I am worried that these Dragon Guard are here to deal with us. Xiao Zhao looked at Li Zongjio and said, knowing was one thing, but actually facing it was another. They did not know the true purpose of these people's appearance. Oh, this old thing, I didn't deal with him, but he dares to cause trouble for me? Li Zongjio was also displeased when he heard this. Obviously, the old thing that Li Zongjio was referring to was Emperor Xingyan. Only Li Zongjio had the guts to look down on Emperor Xingyan in Monarch City. It's fine to kill him, but this old man is Xueyue's father after all. Let's beat these people from the Ten Swords sect away first. Li Zongjio said. Food had to be eaten one bite at a time, and things had to be done one by one. The people from the Ten Swords sect are expected to arrive at Sacred Flame Imperial City tomorrow. The betrothal gifts and invitation had arrived before the people arrived. Obviously, these people were still somewhat arrogant. It was like a notice to the Xingyan dynasty's imperial family. Although Emperor Xingyan was not happy, he still accepted it. After all, the Ten Swords sect was controllable, but Li Zongjio was an uncertain factor. Sooner or later, Li Zongjio would have to be dealt with first. Alright, inform me when they arrive tomorrow. Chapter 1180. It was an extremely ordinary wooden airship. It slowly stopped outside the Sacred Flame Royal City. 5 figures walked down from the airship. The person in the lead was a young man in a white robe embroidered with purple and gold patterns. He was young, around 25 years old at most. He wore an extremely exquisite ring on his finger. An extremely penetrating sword intent could be sensed from the ring. He touched the ring on his finger out of habit. This is the Sacred Flame Royal City? It's just so. How can there be a beauty in such a barren and desolate place? The only daughter of Emperor Xian can't be an extremely ugly person, right? The young man mocked. The other young disciples around him also laughed. Is it very funny? No matter how ugly she is, she's still my woman. The man's eyes turned cold. Immediately, the 3 young disciples bowed down. Young sect leader, please forgive us. Alright, don't talk so much after entering the city. If this marriage is successful, then the strength of the Ten Swords sect will reach a peak state. Don't mess it up. The unparalleled Sword Emperor stepped forward and said, this group of people was the group that had come from the Ten Swords sect. Their purpose in coming here was to confirm the matter of the marriage alliance. Yes, Elder. Xia Chuanxiu said. He naturally respected the unparalleled Sword Emperor. Even his father had to respect the unparalleled Sword Emperor. The latter's swordsmanship had already reached the peak. Even though Xia Chuanxiu's talent was not weak, he was just a clown in front of the unparalleled Sword Emperor. There were still many things he could learn from the unparalleled Sword Emperor. He was looking forward to the latter's guidance. However, this trip was not going smoothly. They were stopped the moment they entered the city. Stop, where did you come from? What are you doing in the royal city? A few city guards immediately surrounded Xia Chuanxiu and the others. Xia Chuanxiu and the others looked at them with contempt. These people in front of them were really reckless. If they were in the Tianyan dynasty, they would have chopped off their heads with a sword. How dare they block their way? Friends, we are from the Ten Swords sect of the Sky Flame dynasty. This is our identity token. We are entering the city to meet the emperor. A disciple stepped forward and said. At the same time, he handed over his identity token and stuffed a few purple yuan coins into the soldier's hand. Naturally, they knew this kind of routine. It was just to collect bribes from outsiders like them. Impudent! How dare you bribe in broad daylight? Take these people down. However, who would have thought that the soldier would directly throw the purple yuan coin in his hand onto the ground without even looking at it? He was simply overflowing with dominance, and his face was filled with righteousness. The people from the Ten Swords sect were surprised by such an unusual move. Could it be that the people of the Xingyan dynasty did not fall for this trick? This was impossible. One had to know that money could move the gods. These people were not deities who were pure of heart and few desires. They did not even care about money. However, the angry roar just now attracted the attention of the garrison on the city wall. Immediately, hundreds of city guards rushed out from the city and restricted everyone outside. The city gate was also closed with a bang. The road was blocked. The dignified young lord and elders of the Ten Swords sect were actually blocked by the city gate of the Holy Flame Imperial City. Courting death. Xia Chuanxiu touched the ring on his finger and was ready to attack. In any case, he had to chop off the legs of these thousands of people in front of him and let them know how powerful he was. However, the unparalleled Sword Emperor stopped Xia Chuanqiu. "Officials, may I ask your general to come out and meet me? Cut the crap, all of you kneel down and put your hands on your head. Otherwise, I will kill you with my spear," a centurion said extremely fiercely. They had already received orders before that as long as they found people from the Sky Flame dynasty, they were to directly stop them. It would be best if they could detain them. If it was a normal day, they would just take some money and let them in. However, this order was given by the higher-ups. Even they did not dare to take the money because it would be troublesome. "Since you are so stubborn and do not know what is good for you, don't blame me for being impolite. Take them down," the unparalleled Sword Emperor said faintly. As an Origin Emperor expert, how could he tolerate being treated like this? No matter where he was, he should not be treated like this. Now that he took the initiative to teach them a lesson, nothing would happen. He did not believe that the great emperor of the Shengyan dynasty would be so heartless as to stand up for a few city guards. Immediately, the 3 accompanying disciples took action. They did not use their swords, but only their palms. They easily overturned hundreds of city guards in front of them. Bang, bang, bang. "How dare you attack the city guards?" Someone on the city wall saw this scene and immediately went to report. The unparalleled Sword Emperor and the others frowned. These people in front of them seemed to be here to cause trouble instead of solving the problem. There is a problem. This didn't seem like the style of Monarch City. When encountering such a noble identity token, they would at least have to verify it. How could these people pester them endlessly like this? He was simply stalling for time here. "Let me do it." The archers on the city wall were shooting arrows non-stop. Suddenly, a rain of arrows fell, causing Xia Chuanqiu to snort coldly and jump. The height of the city wall was nothing in front of these experts. Xia Chuanqiu, who had rushed up the city wall, was immediately hit by a series of explosions. It had been a long time since such a situation had happened. The city guards immediately went to war, and the scene was quite fierce. All kinds of weapons were used. They seemed to have been prepared. The mobilization of the troops was also unusually fast. Soon, soldiers from other drill grounds were mobilized. Even Xia Chuanqiu had to use the strength of an Origin Emperor. However, he found that these people were unusually excited, and there was no way to defeat them. Boom! The city gate opened. Several fierce generals rushed out with their elite cavalry. The sky silkworm net in their hands was aimed at the 3 disciples. Even an Origin Emperor expert would find it difficult to escape. In addition, there were many experts in the army. The 3 accompanying disciples could be considered to have been beaten very badly. Listening to the sounds of battle outside the city. In the city, Li Zongjiu and Kuan Erishur were sitting on the top floor of a tea house. They were looking at the scene here. Sitting beside the 2 of them was the commander of the city guards, Wang Ding. Wang Ding poured tea for Li Zongjiu and Lan Kun. At the same time, he also observed the situation outside the city. Unfortunately, these people did not know that the entire city guards were Li Zongjiu's men. Chapter 1181. The number of soldiers was huge, and it was still increasing. Damn it! Let's leave this place first. The unparalleled Sword Emperor had never seen such a thing happen. If he killed his way out, not to mention a marriage proposal, it would be considered merciful if the other party didn't send troops to capture him and cut him into pieces. If this group of people killed a few people in the royal city, they could easily cover it up with their status. Even Emperor Shengyan would turn a blind eye to it. However, if they killed any of the soldiers in front of the city guards, it would be difficult to appease the public's anger. Even Emperor Shengyan would not be able to protect them. Therefore, facing the desperate siege of the city guards, they could not kill them, but beating them up would not vent their anger. Therefore, they could only leave this place now. At another time, they would find an opportunity to enter the city directly. At this moment, it was obviously not a wise move to fight the city guards head-on. They did not expect the unparalleled Sword Emperor of the 10 Swords sect to come to the Holy Flame Royal City. Not only did they not welcome them with courtesy, they even alerted the city guards. The city guards were simply crazy. They had never seen such a strict situation. Moreover, they had already stated their identities, but Junran still attacked them directly. It was obvious that he did not want them to have an easy time. Immediately, these people retreated into the distance. Such a humiliating matter made the people of the Ten Swords sect very angry. They wanted to kill a few people immediately to vent their anger. Is there something wrong with these city guards? They're simply crazy. I've never seen such an unreasonable and barbaric city guard. A few disciples were cursing. Although they had already knocked down hundreds of people, they didn't dare to kill even one person. A few of them had their clothes torn by arrows. If it wasn't for their strong origin energy, they might have been seriously injured by these people. Could this be Emperor Xingyan's intention? Even Xia Chuanqiu was not sure. They were happy to receive the gifts, but they did not expect that when they came to visit, they would be made difficult for. Logically speaking, such a thing should not have happened. Why don't we charge into the city directly? A disciple said, but he was directly slapped by Xia Chuanqiu. Bullshit. Is our Ten Swords sect so shameful that we have to climb over the wall to enter the city? If we can't walk through the gate, our Ten Swords sect will tear it down sooner or later. Xia Chuanqiu shouted angrily. It was not easy for the young master of the Ten Swords sect to come to the Xingyan dynasty, but he was chased away by the city guards. Now, he could not even enter the gate. If this news spread back to the Tianyan dynasty, wouldn't it? The unparalleled Sword Emperor didn't speak for a long time. Obviously, he was very angry. Although he didn't suffer any injuries, the damage to his face couldn't be repaired so easily. Today's battle at the city gate could be considered as a form of training for the soldiers. At the same time, it also displayed the strength of the city guards. They had not even entered the city, but they had already turned around and ran away. They came with a lot of vigor, but returned in defeat. Seems a little cool. When Kun Erishur saw this scene, he was also completely shocked by Li Zongjiu's strength. At the same time, he was also surprised that Li Zongjiu would do this for him. He secretly mobilized the city guards to do such a thing, and right under the nose of the emperor. No one would dare to believe that such a thing would happen. This was simply treating Emperor Xingyan as a dead man, and directly stirring up trouble in Monarch City. If this matter were to spread to Emperor Xingyan's ears, how angry would he be? Moreover, these people who were chased away were the distinguished guests of the Xingyan dynasty. Being chased away like this was an even bigger crime. Even if they enter the city, I won't let them reach the foot of the imperial city. Li Zongjiu said indifferently. He had already made arrangements beforehand, and the few people from Ten Swords sect were really not enough. Is it okay to do this? Kun Erishur was also a little worried. Today, the city guards had mobilized nearly 10,000 people. Emperor Xingyan would definitely be aware of such a large mobilization. What can happen? What can he do? Li Zongjiu said indifferently. Kun Erishur was also completely convinced by Li Zongjiu's audacity. If there was anyone else in the world who had such great ability, it could only be Li Zongjiu. Just as Li Zongjiu and the rest were sipping tea, there were two young people on the street, a man and a woman, who looked like heroes of the underworld. What's going on? The city guards have been mobilized in such a large formation. There were King Yuan energy fluctuations just now. The woman stared at the situation outside the city walls. She said with a frown, "Let's go and check it out." As soon as the man finished speaking, he leaped out and disappeared from the street in the blink of an eye. He's too impulsive. The woman immediately stomped her foot. However, she also leaped out and followed closely behind. Obviously, the strength of these two people was extraordinary. The fluctuations in the surroundings naturally could not escape Li Zongjiu's eyes. Immediately, he looked down. This batch of Dragon Guard is so young? Li Zongjiu looked at the two people who had just rushed out. If one were to say which family's disciple was the most outstanding genius in Monarch City, it would definitely be the Dragon Guard. Not only were they young, but they were also very strong. It seemed like these people would not be able to enter the city today. You can also go to the imperial city today to propose marriage. As for these people, I'll help you deal with them. Li Zongjio said. Kun Erasure was a little frightened when he heard this. What did he mean by deal with them? Was he going to send them back? Or was he going to leave their lives behind? However, since Li Zongjio had intervened, he must have his own way of dealing with them. I'll go. Kun Arashi's actions would definitely shock the people in Monarch City. However, Kun Erasure was now the young castellan of Kun Castle. In terms of status, he was not without advantages. He was even higher than the young sect master of the outer sect. At the same time, one should not forget. Kun Erasure still had a teacher. Master Jingyue, Senior Mirror Emperor. Kun Erasure immediately rushed to Jingyue Villa. After mentioning this matter, Master Jingyue was naturally willing, but the consequences had to be carefully considered. This hurdle of the Holy Flame Emperor was not that easy to pass. Send someone to investigate the movements of these people. Then, go to the residence and gather all the primitive emperor experts. Li Zongjio ordered. Yes, young master. Chapter 1182. The 16 primitive emperors in the White Deer Mansion had been summoned to the tea house. Nangong Wuji did not come. His more important task was to oversee the White Deer Mansion, so he would not leave unless there was something important. Even Hong Shi-san came directly. Gathering so many primitive emperors at the same time, not even Yuan monarchs. What was he going to do? In the Holy Flame Royal City, apart from the royal family, only Li Zongjio's family could mobilize so many primitive emperors in such a short time. Even if the primitive emperors of the 4 major families were added together, they would probably not be as many as Li Zongjio had. Let's eat something first. We will go out of the city to deal with a few people in a while. Li Zongjio also let these primitive emperors have a meal. After all, they were going out to do something, so they had to eat their fill. This way, the morale before the battle would be even higher. It was not easy for a small student in the Heavenly Star Medicine Mansion to develop from a casino to such a large scale. At least in the eyes of outsiders, it was not easy. However, it seemed rather easy for Li Zongjio to accomplish all this. It only took a little more than a year. As long as there was money, everything could be solved. There was nothing to be afraid of. He did not encounter any obstacles. Many people in the city also saw the actions of the White Deer Mansion and heard about what had happened at the city gate earlier. After all, this was not a small matter. When Song Jiyu of the Song family heard about this, she immediately knew what Li Zongjio wanted to do. When Li Zongjio had just arrived in the Holy Flame Royal City, Song Jiyu had come into contact with Li Zongjio and knew that this guy was not afraid of anything. Logically speaking, such a person should have died a long time ago, but he was still alive until now. Moreover, he was still living a glorious life. Almost no one could compete with Li Zongjio. That guy couldn't possibly be planning to attack the people from the Ten-Sword sect, right? Everyone in the city knew that the Ten-Sword sect was here for the peace marriage. Li Zongjio's action was a provocation to the Holy Flame royal family. He did not put the royal family in his eyes at all. If that's the case, I'm afraid Li Zongjio is in big trouble. Song Jiyu's current position in the Song family could be said to be unshakable and indestructible. Just one project with the White Deer Mansion had already earned her a lot of money, and she was still earning a huge sum. This was Song Jiyu's connections, and foresight. Not many people had Song Jiyu's vision and boldness. Therefore, Song Jiyu succeeded. But now, what Li Zongjio did was simply too shocking. After staying in Monarch City for so long, Song Jiyu was very clear that if she wanted to live well, she had to do her job well in the city. She had to play within the rules. There was a bottom line that she could never cross. That was to be the enemy of the royal family. If she had the slightest intention of rebelling, the royal family would not even need an excuse to deal with her. She did not know how many influential people there were. So what if she had power and influence? The royal family's power was beyond her imagination. Even I can't do anything about this. Song Jiyu rubbed her head. Of course, Li Zongjio did not need Song Jiyu's help. He could easily deal with it by relying on the strength of the White Deer Mansion. At this moment, outside the city, the unparalleled Sword Emperor and the others were sitting on a mountain top. At the same time, they had sent a message to the royal family. If no one came to welcome them this time, they would not enter the city. Who knew where they got the courage and confidence to be so stubborn? They really thought highly of themselves. Elder, there are experts approaching. Everyone stood up and stared ahead. Xia Chuanqiu also stood up and stared ahead. The rays of the setting sun shone. Behind the setting sun, more than 10 figures were rapidly approaching. They are all experts. It seems that the Xingyan dynasty has finally learned to be sensible for once. Even from afar, he could feel the powerful strength emanating from these people. The aura formed by the gathering of experts was different from that of ordinary people. Whoosh! Hong Shisan landed. The experts behind him also landed one by one in front of the people from the Ten Swords sect. However, their expressions were a little strange. Of course, everyone looked at one of them at the same time. It was the unparalleled Sword Emperor. The chances of encountering such a powerhouse were relatively low. Even in the Xingyan dynasty, people had heard of the name of the unparalleled Sword Emperor. They also knew that the latter's swordsmanship was exquisite and incomparable to ordinary people. Many of them wanted to see it for themselves. Are you here to welcome us? Seeing that you are so sincere, we will forget about the incident at the city gate this morning. Xia Chuanqiu waved his hand. He expressed his magnanimity. However, these people in front of him did not move at all. I have long heard that the unparalleled Sword Emperor's swordsmanship is superb. It is such a coincidence that we meet in this desolate place today. Let's spar. A sword-wielding expert walked out from the crowd. There were not many opportunities to spar with the unparalleled Sword Emperor. How could he let go of such a good opportunity? The unparalleled Sword Emperor frowned. An imposing aura was released spontaneously. He was at the peak of the primitive emperor realm, an elder of the Ten Swords sect. Unexpectedly, he was called out by the other party. What was the meaning of this? Was this the tradition of the Xingyan dynasty? Is this how the Xingyan dynasty treats its guests? The unparalleled Sword Emperor said indifferently. His eyes seemed to have turned into a sharp sword, sweeping towards the people in front of him. These people did not seem to be here to welcome them into the city. Over a dozen primitive emperor powerhouses gathered here at the same time. The imposing manner was so strong that it made the 3 accompanying disciples of Ten Swords sect feel dizzy and dizzy. When one's realm was not enough, such a situation would naturally occur in a battle between experts. At this moment, they had no choice but to retreat to the back. Even Xia Chuanqiu felt like he was under the control of others. You are courting death. Xia Chuanqiu touched his ring. Immediately, the ring turned into a golden longsword, hanging in front of Xia Chuanqiu. The aura released from the golden light sword easily dispersed the surrounding power, making him feel better. Who are you? These people seem to be here to humiliate them. How could Xia Chuanqiu tolerate this? The aura of a first-grade primitive emperor was gradually released. However, this aura was not worth mentioning in the eyes of others. Immediately, Hong Shisan and the others also released their primitive emperor chi. Boom! 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 The aura of experts soared to the sky. Even the clouds in the sky were affected. For you, everyone's aura suppressed Xia Chuanqiu to the point that he could not breathe. Even now, Xia Chuanqiu was barely able to resist. With a little effort, Xia Chuanqiu was defeated by the withered leaves. The unparalleled Sword Emperor could not bear the aura of a peak primitive emperor. It exploded in an instant. Chapter 1183. When the unparalleled Sword Emperor's aura burst out, everyone's expression changed. Even if the unparalleled Sword Emperor was alone, it was enough to fight against at least 10 of them. However, there were experts in the White Deer Mansion as well. 2 of them had hidden their strength well. At this moment, when they felt the terrifying pressure of the unparalleled Sword Emperor, they released their strength at the same time. Their auras gathered together with the auras of the remaining 10 people, forming a kind of power that was equal to the unparalleled Sword Emperor. I think you're courting death. The unparalleled Sword Emperor's aura was locked in a stalemate with the other party's aura. He didn't gain any advantage. If this continued, the unparalleled Sword Emperor would be the one at a disadvantage. Immediately, a fluorescent wooden sword appeared in the Sword Emperor's hand. With the appearance of the wooden sword, everyone immediately felt the pressure multiplied. They felt as if their entire body was being crushed and they couldn't move at all. Boom! The unparalleled Sword Emperor didn't show any mercy to the overbearing force. Today, these people repeatedly came to his door, which made the unparalleled Sword Emperor very unhappy. Boom! The wooden sword in his hand was the crystallization of the unparalleled Sword Emperor's power that he cultivated for more than 100 years. It was because of the unparalleled Sword Emperor's great strength and profound realm that he could use a wooden sword to fight against the divine weapons of heaven and earth. Even the unparalleled Sword Emperor was confident. There was no weapon in the world that was stronger than the wooden sword in his hand. At most, it was just as strong. All of you die. The unparalleled Sword Emperor roared, and the sword in his hand whizzed out. Sword controlling technique. The wooden sword turned into a cold light and rushed forward. The aura gathered by the White Deer Mansion's people was easily broken by the opponent at this moment. The first target of this sword was Hong Shirsan. Hong Shirsan stood on the spot. Facing this attack, he couldn't dodge at all. He could only circulate his origin energy together to protect the vital parts of his body. However, the unparalleled Sword Emperor's wooden sword was attracted by a sharp sword in an instant. Swish! With the appearance of this sword, the wooden sword was directly split into two from the middle. It was extremely easy. Most importantly, the appearance of this sword didn't have any aura. After breaking the wooden sword, this incomparably low-key sword circled in the air and finally broke through the crowd's formation, landing in front of a young man. The people of the White Deer Mansion all retreated and stood on both sides, forming a line. It was obvious that this person was the leader. If someone at this level can be called the unparalleled Sword Emperor, then what about me? Li Zongjio said disdainfully. Just now, he had also used the Imperial Sword technique. Not only had he broken his opponent's sword, but he had also severely injured his opponent's mind. The unparalleled Sword King's teeth were chattering as if he was a trembling old man. You or you? The strong had a clear understanding of the relationship between the strong. When Li Zongjio came out, the matchless Sword Emperor felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. His entire body felt cold. If Li Zongjio wanted to take his life, it would be as easy as flicking a finger. Therefore, the matchless Sword Emperor didn't dare to make the slightest move. You're just a scoundrel relying on your sharp sword. How dare you slander my sex, unparalleled elder? Brat, I think you don't want to live anymore. Xia Chuanxiu saw a young man suddenly walk out. After thinking carefully, he wondered if there was a young man with a higher status than him in the entire Xingyan dynasty. He was the young master of the Ten Swords sect and was about to become the emperor's son-in-law of the Xingyan dynasty. These two identities were enough to make Xia Chuanxiu ascend to the heavens. How many people in the Xingyan dynasty could be compared to him? Therefore, when Xia Chuanxiu looked at Li Zongjio who dared to offend his sex elder, he guessed that Li Zongjio only dared to be so presumptuous because he had the support of many primitive emperors. Therefore, he directly walked out and scolded Li Zongjio. Unexpectedly, before Li Zongjio could speak, the unparalleled Sword Emperor had already slapped Xia Chuanxiu's face. Slap. Xia Chuanxiu's face immediately swelled up. This slap was full of strength and directly hit Xia Chuanxiu's face. Therefore, Xia Chuanxiu couldn't avoid it at all. After being slapped, Xia Chuanxiu was also in a state of confusion. What do you mean by this? I'm standing up for you, and you actually dare to hit me. Xia Chuanxiu also had a temper. After all, being slapped in front of so many people made Xia Chuanxiu feel very humiliated. However, the unparalleled Sword Emperor also felt that this slap wasn't enough to vent his anger. He stepped forward and kicked Xia Chuanxiu, causing him to continuously roll on the ground several times. Finally, he stopped. I didn't know that the expert was here. Sorry for disturbing you. After kicking Xiaochuanqiu, the unparalleled Sword Emperor also quickly knelt down on one knee and saluted Li Zongjiu. Not only the three accompanying disciples of the Ten-Sword sect, but even Hong Shisan and the others were dumbfounded. This was probably the most unbelievable thing they had ever seen in their lives. They never thought that the unparalleled Sword Emperor would actually salute Li Zongjiu directly and even call Li Zongjiu an expert. This showed that Li Zongjiu's strength was far above the unparalleled Sword Emperor's. No wonder you could live for so long. Your eyesight is pretty good. Li Zongjiu glanced at the unparalleled Sword Emperor. No wonder this guy could live to cultivate to the Supreme Being realm. This ability to take advantage of the situation is really rare. My brother wants Emperor Xingyan's daughter. If you still want to live, hurry up and get out of here. Li Zongjiu said indifferently, as if he was driving away a few flies. He wanted to drive them away directly. The unparalleled Sword Emperor heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that this expert's temper was still relatively good. In the distance, the guy who was kicked to the ground couldn't get up for a long time. After hearing the conversation between the two, he simply lay on the ground and didn't want to get up. If he got up now, how embarrassing would that be? So he simply lay on the ground. He just pretended that he had fainted. By the way, since you came here, you must have brought something. Li Zongjiu suddenly said, his eyes shining. Since the Ten-Sword sect was here to make peace, they must have brought a great gift. Otherwise, who would be willing to take a fancy to people like you? Could it be that they really thought that they would bring back their princess just because of your name? Obviously, it was impossible. The unparalleled Sword Emperor heard this. This expert was clearly here to snatch it from him. The things they brought with them on this trip were naturally extremely precious, even more precious than their lives. It was originally a betrothal gift, which was quite decent. However, after Li Zongjiu appeared, he wanted to take it back with just a few words. And if they didn't hand it over, the consequences were obvious. He wasn't afraid of the Ten-Sword sect at all. The preciousness of the things made the unparalleled Sword Emperor hesitate. He didn't want to hand it over, but his eyes gradually turned cold as he looked at Li Zongjiu. The unparalleled Sword Emperor slapped himself in his heart. He was already so old. How could he not understand this? There was only hope if he was alive. Moreover, this was a very good opportunity to make friends with the expert. Expert, we didn't bring any valuable betrothal gifts this time. However, our sect leader has specially prepared some gifts for the expert. Please accept them. If you have time in the future, you can come to the mountain gate of the Ten-Sword sect as a guest. We will definitely treat you with great hospitality. As he spoke, the unparalleled Sword Emperor held a box in his hand. Although the box didn't have any lock, there was a formation engraved on it. Without a special unlocking method, it couldn't be opened even if it was destroyed. The things he brought with him were naturally in the box. As for the unlocking method, the unparalleled Sword Emperor naturally wouldn't hand it over. First of all, he was hoping for a fluke. If this person couldn't open the box, he might just give it back to him. At the same time, he could take the opportunity to see how powerful this person was and whether he could really open the box. If he wanted to open it, he would need to be at least level 8 in terms of formation cultivation. As soon as Li Zongjiu took the box, he easily broke the sealing formation on the box. It was as if the box didn't exist at all. Sword Manipulation Sutra, Ginseng Fruit. You guys are so thoughtful. I'm not interested in the Sword Manipulation Sutra, but I'll take the Ginseng Fruit. After speaking, Li Zongjiu returned the Sword Manipulation Sutra and the box to the unparalleled Sword Emperor. Chapter 1184. What surprised the unparalleled Sword Emperor was that Li Zongjiu actually liked the Ginseng Fruit more and even returned the sword controlling scripture. This was considered as leaving a way out for the unparalleled Sword Emperor. Although the Ginseng Fruit was a 9th grade elixir, the sword controlling scripture was their Ten Swords sect's legacy technique. This time, they directly offered it to the royal family of the Xingyan dynasty, which already showed considerable sincerity. Otherwise, Emperor Xingyan wouldn't have relented so easily. He directly betrothed Princess Jing into her. Of course, if it wasn't for Li Zongjio's interference, there wouldn't be any surprises. Now that Li Zongjio was involved, the direction of the situation changed according to Li Zongjio's intention. However, the unparalleled Sword Emperor had another idea in his mind. With Li Zongjio's cultivation realm, he naturally had a strong desire for such sutras and techniques, the more the better. However, he actually didn't care about the supreme Dao technique of the Ten-Sword sect. It was obvious that he didn't put the sword-controlling scripture in his eyes. Could it be that the person in front of him didn't know the preciousness of the sword-controlling scripture? He didn't know what the expert in front of him was thinking, but the unparalleled Sword Emperor's heart calmed down. At least the scripture was saved. Alright, you guys can go. I won't send you off. Li Zongjio directly turned around and led the group of primitive emperors back to the sacred flame royal city. The unparalleled Sword Emperor and the others were left dumbfounded. They didn't even know what was going on. Where did these primitive emperors come from, and what was going on with the expert just now? Could it be that this is the attitude of the royal family of the sacred flame royal city? The unparalleled sword hero frowned. It seemed that they still underestimated the Xingyan dynasty. If these people were all experts of the Xingyan dynasty, it was to show them the true strength of the Xingyan dynasty. At the same time, they took away the scripture. But they didn't want the sword-controlling scripture. Ordinary people knew the preciousness of the sword-controlling scripture. Now it seemed that the royal family wanted to show their attitude. They didn't care about the scripture at all. What a trick! When they returned, the Xingyan dynasty's royal family would definitely become famous. They would directly take care of the Ten-Sword sect. They wouldn't even have the time to enter the sacred flame imperial city. Brilliant! The royal family is truly brilliant. The unparalleled Sword Emperor was also astonished. The unparalleled Sword Emperor looked at Xia Chuanqiu, who still hadn't gotten up, and ordered people to help him up. Xia Chuanqiu's face was filled with indignation. His face was even swollen. Elder, why should we be afraid of this person? When I return, I will explain this to my father. Then, we will bring our men to flatten this holy flame royal city. Idiot! The unparalleled sword hero angrily rebuked. Didn't you see those people just now? If that young man in the lead wanted to kill me, it would be as easy as crushing an ant. Even if your father came, it would be the same. We cannot afford to offend this person. The matchless sword hero said in a deep voice. At least for now, he couldn't afford to provoke him. What? This person's strength is so incredible? Xia Chuanqiu's heart tightened when he heard the matchless sword hero's words. To think that there was such a person in the world. The other party didn't even make a move, but the matchless sword hero didn't dare to fight anymore and retreated. Let's go back to the sect. The matchless sword hero cowered very quickly this time. This was because he knew exactly how powerful Li Zongjio was, so he already knew what to do. If he continued to stay in this place, or even enter the sacred flame royal city, he would only be humiliated even more. Therefore, the people of the Ten Swords sect left with their tails between their legs. It wasn't easy for them to come here, and they didn't know what they had encountered. How should they explain themselves when they returned? It wouldn't be easy to deal with the aftermath of today's matter. Li Zongjio brought his men back to the White Deer Mansion. Everyone ate and drank outside, and it was really exciting. At the same time, they also knew how terrifying Li Zongjio's strength was. Just by revealing his aura, he was able to make the so-called unparalleled Sword Emperor retreat. With such strength, who would dare to be arrogant? Even the imperial family wouldn't dare to do anything. When the two groups of people left the barren mountain, two figures appeared from their hiding places. These two people were Dragon Guard, who had appeared from the city earlier. Originally, they came to investigate the background of these people. When they found out that these people were from the Ten Swords sect, they were a little surprised. Because the Sacred Flame Imperial family had warmly invited the people of the Ten Swords sect to visit, and at the same time, they would have some discussions. Who knew that these people would be stopped by the city guards at the city gate? Such a situation was really unheard of. Originally, They wanted to appear and explain the matter, and take the initiative to bring a few people into the city, who knew that Li Zongjio and the others would kill them. Then, the two of them witnessed what had just happened with their own eyes. They couldn't believe it. My eyes didn't deceive me, right? This is the legendary matchless sword emperor? Just like that, he admitted defeat. The man kept wiping his eyes. However, the young sect master was really pitiful. After being beaten up, he had lost a lot of face. We have to report this matter to the emperor as soon as possible. That person just now is the real owner of the White Deer Mansion, Li Zongjio. The girl said. In her eyes, she was also very interested in Li Zongjio. However, there was more fear in her eyes. The existence of such a person was a huge threat to the entire dynasty. This time, Li Zongjio obviously took the initiative to intervene in the political affairs of the dynasty. This person was their dynasty's partner, and now he was chased away. Fortunately, the other party admitted defeat. If he didn't, even if he couldn't destroy the Sacred Flame Imperial City, it would be easy for him to destroy the other cities in the Sacred Flame Imperial City. At that time, the world would be in a state of chaos. Obviously, Li Zongjio didn't consider this at all. If Li Zongjio was left alive, it would be a huge disaster. Hey, do you think that kid discovered us just now? The man said. If he was someone that even the matchless sword emperor was afraid of and admitted defeat in a second, how powerful would he be? We used the hidden dragon technique. Our aura is completely concealed. It's impossible for him to discover us. The girl still had a lot of confidence in the hidden dragon evasion technique that she cultivated. That makes sense. Let's go back first. The two of them discussed for a while before they swiftly returned to the city. The things that they had witnessed today were definitely extremely shocking. The Dragon Guard was directly under the command of Emperor Xingyan. He didn't care about all the official positions in the city. Therefore, he didn't care about Li Zongjio's identity as the imperial protector. In their eyes, there was only one Emperor Xingyan. The rest were people that they could kill. Chapter 1185. The Imperial Garden. Emperor Xingyan sat in the pavilion, reading the scroll in his hand under the night sky. There were a few ministers waiting in front of the court. Outside the palace, there were two people waiting. When the ministers who passed by saw one of them, they all bowed and greeted respectfully. Greetings, Master Mirror Moon. Greetings, Master Mirror Moon. One of the ministers seemed to be friends with Master Mirror Moon. He had already walked far away, but he took 2 steps back and stood in front of Master Mirror Moon. Master, please go back. I'm afraid that today's matter will be difficult. The Emperor is furious. Please go back first. Don't get yourself into trouble. After all the people around had left, Yi Zichen stood up. Kuan Arisher looked up at the sky. Teacher, I'm sorry that you're here today. Please go back. I'll deal with it myself. Kuan Arisher said to Master Mirror Moon, who was beside him. Master Mirror Moon lowered her head and sighed. It seems that today's matter doesn't depend on you or me. Even I can't do anything. Master Mirror Moon said. At this moment, Master Mirror Moon was still standing in the palace and didn't leave. Emperor Xingyan gave Master Mirror Moon face and didn't ask the Imperial Guards to drive Master Mirror Moon out. If Master Mirror Moon left, Kuan Arisher would probably be arrested by the Imperial Guards immediately. As for the so-called marriage proposal, he couldn't even bring it up until now. How could he bring it up under such circumstances? Kuan Arisher knew that. But for Shueiyue, he had to take the risk today. Teacher, please don't worry. I have my ways. Kuan Arisher bowed to Master Mirror Moon. Master Mirror Moon glanced at Kuan Arisher and patted his shoulder. Then she sighed and turned to leave. Obviously, Master Mirror Moon knew that today's matter couldn't be done. But since Kuan Arisher wanted to continue working hard, she let him. If Master Mirror Moon continued to stay here, it would be very inappropriate. If she left now, she could save some face. But after today, Emperor Xingyan probably wouldn't trust Master Mirror Moon anymore. It was fortunate that he didn't list Master Mirror Moon as an enemy. After Master Mirror Moon left, the Imperial Guards immediately stepped forward and detained Kuan Arisher. Let me see, Emperor Xian. Although Lan Kuan was held up by dozens of spears, he did not show the slightest bit of fear. Instead, he stood firmly on the spot. Who do you think you are? Do you think the great emperor is someone you can meet whenever you want? Take him down and throw him into the blood prison. The vice commander of the imperial guards, Zhang, however, Kuan Erasure, stood still and didn't move. Immediately, Zhang Hu pulled out his long sword and hit Kuan Arashi's forehead with the hilt. However, the hilt of the long sword exploded. Obviously, this move couldn't hurt Kuan Erasure at all. You have some skills. Seeing this, Zhang Hu also used all his strength and kicked Kuan Erasure in the stomach. Boom! Zhang Hu was wearing heavy armor. The power of this kick penetrated metal and stone. It directly sent Kuan Erasure flying and kneeling on the ground. Blood flowed out from between his teeth. At this moment, Lan Kuan naturally wished that he could stand up and kill Zhang Hu. However, if he did that, his wish to marry Shueiyue would become even more of a joke. Just you wait. Kuan Erasure glared fiercely at Zhang Hu, but Zhang Hu looked at Kuan Erasure with disdain. So scary. The young castellan of Kuan Castle. Take him away. Kuan Erasure was sent to the blood prison by the imperial guards. This scene was also seen by the dragon guard who came back to report the situation. However, he was also watching in the dark. So this is the kid who wants to marry Princess Jingon? He really overestimates himself. The boy couldn't help but shake his head when he saw Kuan Erasure being kicked away. If it were him, he would have chopped off the lieutenant's leg on the spot. Then he would have slit the lieutenant's neck. He even thought about the direction of his attack. Unfortunately, the one kneeling there wasn't him. What do you know? The girl somewhat understood why Kuan Erasure was holding back. However, after they reported the situation, Emperor Xingyan was determined to kill Kuan Erasure. Wanting to be with Princess Jingon was even harder than ascending to the heavens. Inside the imperial city. Although Shueiyue was staying in the fragrance pavilion, she was extremely concerned about the situation outside. When she heard that Kuan Erasure was actually imprisoned in the blood prison by the imperial guards, her heart burned with anxiety. Let me out. Do you hear me? Shueiyue angrily glared at the Vermilion Bird Army in front of her. However, these Vermilion Bird Army guards didn't care about Princess Jingon. They only kept Princess Jingon in the courtyard. The chief of the Vermilion Bird Army who was in charge of this place was Su Mo. Due to the princess's special status, Su Mo was also specially deployed here. The people under him were all women, but if one were to talk about ruthlessness, these women wouldn't hesitate at all. After Su Mo entered the city, he also heard a lot of rumors. Especially after knowing that Li Zongjio was in conflict with the imperial family. Wasn't this nonsense? If a fight really broke out, how many attacks could a small courtyard like the White Deer Mansion withstand? Guard this place. Don't let anyone in and don't let anyone out. If there are any intruders, take them down first. Su Mo ordered. Chief. Then, Su Mo quietly left the palace and brought a fast horse over. He quickly galloped towards the White Deer Mansion. Although the White Deer Mansion had spies all over the city, they didn't have the ability to know the situation inside the palace. At least for now, they didn't have enough strength. Therefore, when Li Zongjio returned to the mansion, he didn't receive any news. He only knew that Kuan Erasure had been gone for an entire day. Li Zongjio sat in the main hall. He originally wanted to fiddle with his Dao ginseng fruit. If this fruit was eaten directly, its effects would be extraordinary. At least for his current realm, it would be extremely useful. If it was refined into an elixir, its effects would be even more perfect. Therefore, Li Zongjio was also thinking about what kind of elixir he should refine from this Dao ginseng fruit. When he heard Xiao Zhao talk about what happened in the city and heard that Kuan Erasure had been gone for an entire day, he frowned. Isn't it just a marriage proposal? Why did he go for an entire day? Even his competitor, Li Zongjio, was sent away, but there was still no news from Kuan Erasure. The spies in the palace haven't been set up yet. Therefore, it will take some time to obtain information from the palace. Our strength isn't enough to infiltrate the palace. Xiao Zhao said. Even if the White Deer Mansion was powerful, the palace definitely wouldn't be weak either. If you have this level of skill, the palace also has it. Moreover, it's even better at using it. Some of them are experts sent from all over the world, high-level professionals. Suddenly, there was a rush of footsteps. Liu Pei walked to the front of the hall. "Young master, there's a chief of the Vermilion Bird Army called Su Mo outside. HM? Invite him in." Chapter 1186. Su Mo waited at the door for less than half a minute before Xiao Zhao personally came forward to welcome him. "General Su, please come in." "Manager Zhao." Su Mo glanced at the quick-witted girl in front of him again. The last time he came, he didn't know about the terrifying power Xiao Zhao wielded in the city. When he found out later, he exclaimed repeatedly that one shouldn't judge a book by its cover. He couldn't tell that such a young girl actually possessed such heaven-defying means. Although Li Zongjio was paving the way behind her, Xiao Zhao was the one who put in the effort to complete such a grand scheme. She was definitely not simple. "Please come in." Before they entered the main hall, Li Zongjio walked out from the hall. "Su Mo, little girl?" Li Zongjio looked at the tall girl in red military attire in front of him. The last time they met was in the Incandescent Mountain. He had even given her an opportunity by gifting her the Millennium Fire Glass Flower. When Li Zongjio saw Su Mo, he knew that the Millennium Fire Glass Flower had been given to the right person. Given Su Mo's strength, she was able to unleash the full power of the Millennium Fire Glass Flower. Its effects weren't any weaker than the Millennium Fire Glass Flowers. Li Zongjio. When Su Mo saw Li Zongjio again, she realized that although Li Zongjio hadn't changed much, he was still wearing the same ordinary attire. However, the arrogance on his face was even more pronounced. If Li Zongjio hadn't possessed such heaven-defying abilities, Su Mo would have really wanted to spar with Li Zongjio and teach this unruly fellow a lesson. "Oh no, my friend is in trouble." Su Mo wasn't here to catch up with Li Zongjio. In fact, Su Mo had already violated military regulations by sneaking out. If she was found out, the consequences would be severe. What? That guy called Kuan Erishur was thrown into the blood prison by the great emperor. Su Mo said. Upon hearing this, Li Zongjio's eyes immediately filled with killing intent. In just an instant, Su Mo had already sensed the astonishing energy hidden in Li Zongjio's body. However, he did not know how to resolve this matter today. He didn't even know whether it was right or wrong to inform Li Zongjio about this. "Emperor Xingyan, do you really think you're the emperor?" Li Zongjio was furious. He had told him nicely, but he didn't listen. Instead, he forced him to make a move. He wanted to make Li Zongjio angry. Today, he had to let this Emperor Xingyan know what his status was. "Go, gather all the primitive emperors and let Hong Shi-san lead the team to the blood prison and get him out." "Yes, young master." Xiao Zhao was also very excited. This moment had finally arrived. Ever since Xiao Zhao set up the White Deer Mansion, he knew that there would be a day when he would go against the imperial family. Now, it seemed that this day was going to be today. Regardless of life or death, this matter had to be done. Immediately, Xiao Zhao went to gather the primitive emperors. At the same time, he issued a summon order. This summon order was for those who had yet to become the staff of the White Deer Mansion, or those who were idling around. These people were not willing to listen to the orders of the White Deer Mansion for a long time. They wanted freedom, so they did not join for the time being. However, they could be hired with a high price to gather these people. The total number was about 25 people. 25 primitive emperors. It was enough to overturn a royal city. With the power of the White Deer Mansion, it was indeed terrifying to be able to mobilize such a large number of experts in a short period of time. It was no wonder that the imperial family hated Li Zongjio and the White Deer Mansion so much. "What are you doing?" Su Mo was shocked. Looking at Li Zongjio, it seemed that he was going to rebel. How could she, Su Mo, as the commander of the Vermilion Bird Army, watch this kind of riot happen in front of her eyes? "Li Zongjio, don't be rash." Su Mo instantly took out the Vermilion Bird Divine Crossbow from his waist. As the Vermilion Bird Divine Crossbow, bounced, an arrow was already on the trajectory. A simple pull of the trigger was enough to unleash a power that could kill a Yuan monarch. Li Zongjio, listen to me. We will think of a solution together. However, if you break out of the prison, you will be guilty of treason. Su Mo was burning with anxiety. She never thought that Li Zongjio would make such an extreme decision. The vermilion bird divine crossbow in her hand was also pointed at Li Zongjio's head. She had to ensure that Li Zongjio would not attack. Otherwise, she would rather take Li Zongjio down herself than let Li Zongjio do such a thing. This has nothing to do with you. Li Zongjio gently waved his hand and shattered the vermilion bird divine crossbow in Su Mo's hand. It turned into a pile of parts and fragments that fell to the ground. Su Mo was shocked. Li Zongjio's realm was indeed high. Zongjio, stop. Don't force me to attack. Su Mo's hands were in front of her as a force condensed on her wrists. Just as Su Mo was about to block Li Zongjio, the smoke ball that Xiao Zhao used to gather people rose into the air. Soon after, over a dozen figures swiftly landed in the courtyard. They were also surrounding Su Mo. They looked at Su Mo with a strange gaze. Su Mo surveyed his surroundings. He did not recognize the majority of the people present. However, there were a few people who were extremely famous in the Sacred Flame Royal City. Black and White Chess Emperor, Su Wuji. Broken Arm Guest, Dugan. Lingnan King. You all, Su Mo's eyes widened. These people were famous primitive emperors in the Xingyan dynasty. However, they had all surrendered to Li Zongjio and gathered in Li Zongjio's mansion. Although Su Mo's cultivation had reached grade 6 Yuan monarch and wasn't weak, how could he possibly have any chance of winning against the group of Yuan monarchs in front of him? Therefore, Su Mo was completely shocked. He stood still and withdrew his Yuan Qi. If there was only one person, Su Mo would rather die in battle than retreat. However, he was just an ant, and he was talking nonsense about fighting against a group of elephants. Even if he had the courage to reach the heavens, it was useless. Li Zongjio, by doing this, not only will you not help Kuan Erasure, but you will also implicate the entire Kuan castle. And your White Deer mansion, and even your family. Su Mo continued to persuade Li Zongjio. Now, persuasion was the only way. There was no other way to persuade Li Zongjio. All right, you can rest here. Li Zongjio said. Hong Shi-san, bring everyone to the blood prison. You must save Kuan Erasure. Yes, young master. Even if they were primitive emperors, they had never done such a daring thing. However, if they really wanted to do it, they wouldn't be afraid. Not many people would be afraid of it. Moreover, they were only going to save someone, not to kill someone. So what if it was the Xingyan dynasty? These primitive emperors were very happy to do such a thing. It was better than running into some elemental beast forest to find some ores and treasures, and then having to face some terrifying elemental beasts. There was no need for so many experts to attack the blood prison. Li Zongjio just wanted to show off and declare war on the Holy Flame Imperial family. Hee, I have never done such an awesome thing in my life. Today, I will give it a try. I heard that there are many experts in the palace. Nangong Wuji also rushed over after hearing the news. He also knew about the previous matter. When he saw that these people were ready to set off, he slapped his thigh. Aya, you can't do this. Nangong Wuji wanted to stop them, but he was powerless because he was directly grabbed by Li Zongjio. Follow me into the palace. We will find Emperor Xingyan and have a good chat. Li Zongjio said. What did you say? Nangong Wuji thought that he had misheard, but in the next moment, Li Zongjio directly grabbed Nangong Wuji. Let's go. Their figures soared into the sky. Nearly 30 figures soared into the sky. All the experts in the entire royal city were also shaken. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.